Chapter 67. It was a guitar, and it was also a modern product. It was something from Yang Qindong's dormitory, and it appeared here together with Song. As mentioned before, Yang Qindong would act as anyone in order to complete various tasks. He once learned vocal music to get in touch with his target. Now was the time for him to put on a good show. With the guitar in his hand, Yang Qindong's confidence overflowed. He originally brought this thing with him to discuss things with Lady Xiang. Yang Qindong knew that for talented people, especially people like Lady Xiang, money could only be the third most important thing. Love and talent were the most important things for them. Love was something that Yang Qindong couldn't give them now. He didn't even have a wife. If he married a slut first, he didn't know how others would criticize him. At that time, it was really a matter of public criticism. Since that was the case, he could only give them talent. He believed that the beauty of music was universal. Just like the people in the future, there were people who liked Beijing opera and Kung Fu opera. He did not believe that the songs of the future would not work in this era. The popular and catchy feeling would be unforgettable once they came into contact with it. For example, the few military songs that he taught were already proof. Even if the military songs could be accepted by the people of the current era, he also asked Xiaoyu. She said that the military songs were really good. The beautiful melody was not something that those people of the current era could sing. It was Xiaoyu's words that gave Yang Qindong confidence. That was why he dared to stand on this stage and perform. However, even though he was confident in his heart, Yang Qindong still did not want to use something too advanced to stimulate others in the beginning. For example, if he used Jay Chou's nunchaku, the speed of the singing would probably be too fast. With a hum and ha-ha, people would be confused. If they could not hear it clearly, how could they learn it? Therefore, he had to first use something that was more popular and more accepted in this era. Although it was as distant, at least they could understand the meaning of the words. Today, not only was Yang Qindong going to sing, but he was also going to teach. The people present were his first batch of listeners and students. Now that he had decided to sing, everyone in the hall held their breaths. They wanted to see what the sixth young master, who was known as multi-talented, was going to sing. Just as everyone was building up their emotions, Yang Qindong suddenly put his guitar behind his back and said with a smile, "Since everyone is giving me face today, this young master will follow the rules and do something exciting. How about it?" Although the question was asked, there was no reply for a long time because no one knew what he was going to do. Only Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei reacted quickly and answered loudly, "Okay." The two of them were used to the sixth young master being outstanding. In their eyes, as long as the sixth young master wanted to do something, there was nothing he could not do, and nothing he could not do well. Singing was naturally the same. For example, weren't those military songs from the sixth young master's mouth? Now that they all knew how to sing, everyone said that it was good. Haha. Seeing that there were only two people supporting him, Yang Qindong did not care. Instead, his body first relaxed, then tensed up. He immediately took out his singing skills, and then a loud and clear voice came out from his mouth. "That day, Grandpa took me to see Beijing opera. I saw a lot of big faces on the stage. Red, white, yellow, green, blue, grinning and staring. They sang and shouted at the same time. Wow, 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 it was like thunder chattering in my ears." His opening speech had shocked everyone. That clear voice, without any hesitation, knocked on their hearts like a hammer, making them feel carefree for no reason. The blue-faced Do Dun stole the horse, the red-faced Guangong fought Changsha, the yellow-faced Dianwei, the white-faced Chao Chao, the black-faced Zhang Fei called Cha Cha. Suddenly the climax began, which was the easiest part for people to learn to sing. As soon as the lyrics came out, many people became serious and even excited. At this moment, Su Qingzong and Zhang De opened their mouths wide. Wang Si, who was looking for fault, also opened his mouth wide, showing an expression of disbelief. The whole hall was also very quiet, and only Yang Qindong's loud voice was still surging out. To be honest, the Peking opera's face is really good, but the singer is singing in a dialect. I can't understand it no matter how hard I listen to it. The third part was said casually, but it seemed to be referring to something. The rhythm of Lady Xiang's singing was too slow, and even people who heard it for the first time couldn't understand it. As soon as the words came out, it was obvious that Lady Xiang, who was standing aside and didn't know what to do, hurriedly lowered her head. It was not because she was afraid but because she was shy. Then came the climax. The purple heavenly king holds the pagoda, the green devil fights the yaksha, the golden monkey king, the silver demon, the gray elf, ha ha ha. In order to let people in the hall understand the meaning, Yang Qindong tirelessly sang it 5 times in a row. He didn't stop until he felt that his throat was a little dry. Fortunately, on the third time at the climax, there were already people singing along. After all, as Yang Chendong said, the lyrics and melody were simple, easy to understand and easy to sing. By the fourth time, more and more people began to sing along. By the fifth time, more than half of the people could already sing along with the song. Just when everyone was used to the melody and wanted to continue singing until the end, Yang Chendong suddenly stopped. He couldn't sing Rap Mask too softly. He really felt that his mouth was dry. Fortunately, there was someone who understood him. Tiger's Mane had already prepared tea and was waiting by the side. When he saw the sixth young master stop, he quickly handed him the tea. After Yang Chendong drank it up, he turned around and walked back to the stage. At this time, too many people were still immersed in Rap Mask. It was the first time they heard such a simple and high-spirited song, and they felt that it seemed to be something prepared for their men. For something like this, what's the harm in singing it in front of others? What's the harm? Just when everyone was still immersed in this passionate Rap Mask, a very light voice suddenly sounded. After everyone was stunned, they looked at the stage and saw Yang Chendong gently moving the guitar while speaking softly. A long time ago there was a firearms camp. Song Laosan and his family lived next to them. They had nothing to do and even smoked big cigarettes. Big cigarettes existed in the 6th dynasty's era and were used as a tribute in the Tang dynasty. There were already many people who smoked in the country in the late Ming dynasty. The old couple had no children, so they gave their daughter a pet name, Delian. When Delian grew to the age of 16 or 17, she was really slim and graceful. The matchmakers kicked the door down, but Song Laosan and his wife only ate, drank and played all day long. They didn't care about their daughter's marriage. Later they met a young farmer, Tong Xiaolu, and the two of them fell in love secretly. Once Tong Xiaolu came to Delian's house. The two of them were secretly having a rendezvous and were discovered by their parents. This time they got into big trouble. It was an insult to their ancestors and a disgrace to their family. Delian's father used a leather whip to beat Delian until her skin and flesh were torn open. He gave her a kitchen knife, a rope and a pair of scissors and told her to kill herself. In the end, Delian was forced to jump into the Qingshui River at the entrance. When Tong Xiaolu heard that Delian had jumped into the river and died, he brought the joss paper to the Qingshui River. On a windy and rainy night, he came to pay respects to his sister Delian. After paying his respects, poor Tong Xiaolu also jumped into the river. This was a tragic love story where both sides died for each other. First, he narrated the story in a narrative way. Then, the sound of the guitar accelerated, accompanied by Yang Chendong's clear voice. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp and the willow leaves fill the sky. Dear Lord Ming, listen to me carefully. This matter happened at Shijing's Blue Indigo Factory. In the Blue Indigo Factory's firearms camp, there is a Song Laosan. Speaking of this Song Laosan, the couple smoked a lot and never had a son to give birth to a daughter, Chanwan. Amidst the soft singing, the story was slowly spat out. The content was clear and the melody was easy to understand. It allowed people to quickly immerse themselves in it. The people in the audience who were originally agitated by the Rap Mask began to calm down. Then they were brought into the story and could not extricate themselves. In particular, Miss Xiang, who was standing at the side, was already in tears. It was obvious that she had judged others by herself and thought of herself. In some ways, how could they not be the same? There were many things that were beyond their control, especially when it came to love. How could they have more choices? Yang Chendong's voice continued. He still wanted everyone to understand. After the first time, he only paused for a moment before singing the second time. Then, on the third time, Miss Xiang had already adjusted her emotions. She held the guqin and began to cooperate with Yang Chendong. It had to be said that the top courtesan was indeed the top courtesan. In terms of understanding and acceptance of music, she was indeed much faster than Yang Chendong. At least if it were him, it would be very difficult for him to completely understand the melody after listening to it twice. Miss Xiang did it. Not only that, but because the lyrics were easy to understand, she even began to sing along. At the backstage, the head courtesan, Chuina, was quickly writing down the lyrics with a brush. She had a feeling that this song, Exploring the Qingshui River, would become very popular. If the Nine Arts Workshop could be the first to sing it, it would definitely be very popular. At that time, customers would come in droves and their business would be several times better. They would even be able to get more money when they tipped people. Of course, this was based on the sixth young master's authorization. This time he sang it 4 times. When he saw that Miss Yang was almost done, Yang Chendong laughed and stopped playing the guqin. He stood up and looked at Wang Si, who still looked like he wanted to continue. Young Master Wang, what do you think of my song? Chapter 68. All right. Wang Si was a straightforward person. He stood up immediately. Not only did he say good, but he also sighed and said apologetically, Wang Si underestimated the sixth young master previously. I sincerely apologize to you. I hope the sixth young master won't take it to heart. Aha, what's there to take it to heart? Speaking of which, you also contributed. If you hadn't provoked me like this, I'm afraid this young master wouldn't have dared to come up on stage and embarrass myself. Yang Qindong laughed without the slightest hint of blame. Wang Si was also a clever person. He smiled and said, then we won't have the good fortune to enjoy such beautiful music, right? Ah. Immediately, the two of them smiled at each other and the enmity between them disappeared. The others immediately applauded. Affected by the atmosphere, Duke Wei's son, Su Qingzong, also stood up. He was obviously older than Yang Qindong, but he still cupped his fists and said, Sixth young master, Su Qingzong rarely admires people. You are one of them. Greetings. Greetings, eldest young master Su. Yang Qindong didn't expect Su Qingzong to stand up at this time. This was the descendant of Duke Wei and would be the next Duke Wei. He didn't dare to slight him and cupped his fists to return the greeting. On the other side, Duke Jianghu's second son, Zhang De, also stood up and cupped his fists. Sixth young master, your performance and music are indeed easy to understand and catchy. Zhang De intends to make friends with you. But I wonder if there are any other songs for people to enjoy? When Zhang De said this, everyone's eyes fell on Yang Qindong. Even Lady Xiang's face was full of anticipation. Ah, haven't you enjoyed enough? Yang Qindong laughed heartily. He thought that he had to strike while the iron was hot. While these people were still able to accept the new music, he should release some more. Immediately, he nodded heavily. All right, since that's the case, second young master Zhang also said that we should make friends. Since that's the case, I'll give everyone a song called Friends. With a smile, Yang Qindong picked up the guitar on his body and began to play it gently. All these years I've been alone. The wind has passed, the rain has gone, I've cried, I've made mistakes, but I still remember what I've persevered for. Only when I've truly loved someone will I understand that I'll be lonely, I'll look back, I'll have dreams, I'll have you in my heart. A seemingly peaceful piece of music poured out the bits and pieces of a person's growth process. Then the voice suddenly rose and the eyes looked at Zhang De, Su Qingzong, Wang Si, Yang Yang, Tiger's Mane, Beta Persei, and everyone else in the field, singing, Friends walk together for life, those days will no longer exist. One sentence, a lifetime of love, a glass of wine, friends have never been lonely. Once I call you a friend, you will understand. Every time Yang Qindong's eyes landed on someone, that person could not help but straighten his body. He was excited to receive the sixth young master's gaze. This was one of the songs that made Zhou Huajian famous. Once this song was played, it was naturally unrivaled. After only 2 performances, more and more people below the stage responded. Many of them even had tears in their eyes, as if they had experienced the meaning of being friends again from this song. As soon as the 3 new songs of Rap Mask, Exploring Qingshui River, and Friend came out, everyone looked at Chu Fifan with more admiration in their eyes. No one knew who took the lead to shout, Dong Shui. East Marshal. One more song. East Marshal. East Marshal. It was as loud as thunder. The loud voice spread out from the 9 Art Square, causing the passers-by to stop and look at each other. They could not understand what was going on here today. After the shouting, Yang Qindong kept his guitar and walked down the stage with a big smile. He returned to his table. His 4th brother, Yang Yang, who had been sitting there all this while, was already blushing. When he saw Qindong sitting down, he said, 6th brother, you're really something. Once tonight's matter is spread out, your name will be known throughout the entire capital tomorrow. Yang Qindong smiled and shook his head. This was only the beginning. He had only brought out a small portion of the things that he knew, and it had already caused a commotion in the capital. If these people were to take a look at Crimson City, wouldn't their eyeballs fall out? Yang Qindong's expression was calm, but the people in the audience seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. After listening to the 3 completely different songs, they had gradually accepted this new style of music. There were even a few people who gathered together and began to memorize the lyrics of the 3 songs. One after another they chatted happily. Those who did such things were either people without status or people who felt that their status was not good enough. For example, the son of Duke Su Qingzong, the second son of Duke Zhang De, and the grandson of Wang Ji, the minister of personnel Wang Si, did not bother to do such things. Instead, they held their wine glasses and walked over to Yang Qindong's table. Those who were able to come to the Nine Arts Square and become regulars here were all people who loved music. The three people who were shocked by the three songs took the initiative to walk over to Yang Qindong's table. It was not because he was a secondary class, rank 5 official at such a young age, but because they admired his talent. The three songs just now allowed them to understand what it meant to be a high mountain and flowing river, and what it meant to be a heavenly sound. It could be said that the appearance of the three songs had completely overturned their understanding of music. At this moment they were truly impressed by Yang Qindong's talent. Walking over to him was just an act of goodwill. Naturally, Yang Qindong, who wanted to make friends with influential officials, would not let go of such an opportunity. He immediately drank and chatted merrily with the three people. Including fourth brother Yang, there were 5 people in total. They chatted merrily and laughter could be heard from time to time. Dong Shui, these three songs of yours are truly unforgettable. It's so refreshing. Su Qingzong, who was shaking his head, said with a flushed face. That's right. Compared to the songs I've heard in the past, it's obvious who's better. I'm afraid that I'll have to suffer in the future. Zhang De, the second son of Duke Ying, had a look of pity on his face, as if he was sad that he would not be able to hear such songs in the future. Sigh, second young master Zhang, you're right. With Dong Shui around, why would we worry about not being able to hear such beautiful songs in the future? Isn't that right? As Wang Si spoke, he winked at Yang Qindong, clearly saying that if we want to listen to songs in the future, we'll have to look for you. The three people here, one asking and one answering, seemed to be expressing their own opinions, but in reality they were just testing him. Yang Qindong was well aware of this, but he didn't point it out. Instead, he went with the flow and said, in the future, if you want to listen to music, you can't look for me. No matter what, this young master is still a 5th-rank official of the imperial court. If I really do that, those imperial censors will report me to the emperor. When he mentioned the imperial censors, the three people's expressions changed. The hierarchy of the dynasty was very strict, and people were divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks. Entertainers were of a lowly background, and were looked down upon the most. Any large family would not marry a woman of this background, even if they wanted to take a concubine, not to mention that Yang Qindong was a 5th-rank official in the imperial court. Although this official position was only a low-ranking official, and he had received it after offering the potato, it was still an official. Once there was a crown prince in the future, his power would naturally be used. If he were to sing, it would be a scandal. It would be seen as a disgrace to the imperial court. If that really happened, the spittle of the imperial censor would drown the entire imperial court. When that time came, not only Yang Qindong but the entire Yang family would be implicated. When they thought of the consequences, Su Qingzong and the others could not help but be startled, and then they all shook their heads. Seeing that the three of them knew the serious consequences, Yang Qindong chuckled. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed that Lady Xiang was looking at him from not far away. Chuaner, who was standing beside her, had an anxious look on her face. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he opened his crescent-shaped folding fan with a swish, gently fanning his elegant and handsome face. Come, drink wine, drink wine. There's wine today, so let's drink in the morning. While calling out to Su Qingzong and the others, Yang Qindong was waiting for the fish to take the bait. On one side of the stage, Lady Xiang clenched her fists. Because she was using too much strength, her slender fingers were starting to turn white. However, she did not care at all. Her gaze was fixed in the direction of Yang Qindong. She pursed her lips and did not speak. She was not as calm as before. Beside Lady Xiang, the middle-aged but still charming Chuaner was chattering endlessly. Xiang, do you really plan to take the 6th young master as your master? Although his elder sister was also amazed by the 3 songs he played just now, he was still an official and a noble. We are just the lowest performers and the difference in status is too great. Even if you are the famous Lady Xiang of the capital, if you want to take him as your master, I'm afraid he will not agree. You will only be asking for your own humiliation. Lady Xiang, who had already gathered some courage, clenched her fists even tighter, and there was a hint of struggle in her eyes. However, in the end, she still did not take the step, as if her feet were tied to a boulder. Yang Qindong, who was sitting there drinking wine and chatting with his new friends, noticed that Lady Xiang did not come over in the end. Instead, she disappeared on the side of the stage with the help of Chuena, the procuress. He could not help but sigh in his heart. It seems that I have overestimated Lady Xiang. She is a woman after all, and her status is still inferior. She doesn't even have the courage to ask me for advice. Originally, I planned to take her as my subordinate after I appeared today, but I have to give up for the time being. Although the plan had encountered some temporary difficulties in Yang Qindong's view, it was not a bad thing. At least tonight, he had made a name for himself with the 3 songs. Lady Xiang might have had too many concerns, but there would eventually be bold female artists. Opportunities were always for those who were prepared. After drinking 3 more cups of wine, the sound of the watchman rang out on the street outside the GeoArts workshop. 1 hour. Chapter 69. There was a night ban in the Ming dynasty. The rules were clear. Once the drum was rung at 3 o'clock in the morning, no one was allowed to go out. Only after the morning bell was rung at 3 o'clock in the morning would the ban be lifted. Those who walked on the streets during the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th night would be flogged 50 times. Those who broke the law after the 1st night ban and before the 5th night ban would be flogged 40 times. As soon as the drum was rung, the guests in the hall began to walk out. Yang Qindong lived outside the capital, so he naturally had to be 1 step ahead. Otherwise, he would not be able to make it to the southern city gate in time. Everyone, it's time. Farewell. Yang Qindong stood up and cupped his fists at Su Qingzong and the others. Take care, Dong Shuai. Su Qingzong and the others stood up with smiles on their faces. Although they had just met, they felt regretful that they had not met sooner. If there was anything Yang Qindong gained tonight other than making a name for himself, it was probably making these 3 friends. Of course, more importantly, the news of the 3 new songs spread rapidly in the capital that night. By the next day there were already people on the streets humming the new songs that were fresh and catchy. The tip of the peach leaf is the tip of the tip, the willow leaves hold up the sky. My dear lord, listen to me carefully. In the morning the servant girl, Little Wire, went out to buy breakfast as usual. As soon as she walked out of the courtyard, she heard 2 scholarly young men humming this song that she had never heard before. For a moment, Little Wire felt a refreshing feeling rush into her heart. For a moment she stood there and listened in a daze. It was not until the 2 scholars were far away that she came back to her senses. Then, with a heart full of curiosity, she went to the nearest breakfast shop. When she returned to the courtyard after buying breakfast and saw the young lady getting dressed, she absent-mindedly placed the breakfast box on the round wooden table. Then, she rested her chin on her hands and carefully recalled the song she heard in her mind. Then she hummed softly. After snorting twice, she shook her head forcefully. Her face was filled with anxiety, as if she had lost something she loved. Little Wire, what's wrong with you? After repeated this, Little Wire was still immersed in her own world. The young Miss's voice, which was as pleasant as an oriole's, entered his ears. What are you humming? It sounds really nice. Ah, young miss. At this time, Xiao Wei felt as if she had just woken up from a dream, but her forehead was already covered in sweat. I heard 2 people humming this song when I went out to buy breakfast. It gave me a refreshing feeling, so I learned a few lines. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to remember it. At this moment, Xiao Wei looked as if she hated herself to the core, as if not remembering the lyrics and melody was a huge mistake. What? The young lady's expression suddenly changed. Xiao Wei, are you saying that the song you were humming just now was a new song that people on the streets were singing? Ah, miss, is this a new song? What kind of new song is it? Why haven't I heard it before? The young miss, whose arm was being held by the maid Xiao Wei, had not yet fully put on her clothes. Under the red dress, her slender neck was undoubtedly exposed. Her soft breasts were like white jade half-covered. Her waist was tied, and a pair of slender and well-proportioned legs were exposed. Even her beautiful lotus feet were silently enchanting, as if inviting people to look at her seductively. If there were people who frequented the red light district here, they would definitely exclaim, Madame Xue, and call out her identity. Madame Xue's full name was Xiao Yuxia. She was one of the famous courtesans in the red light district of the capital. Together with Madame Xiang Donghanxiang, they were called half of the beauties in the city. It meant that both of them were more beautiful than half of the city. If they were combined, they would be the most beautiful woman in the city. Last night, Madame Xiang was resting in the backyard of Baihua Hall because of her female physiology. Moreover, she was young and sleepy, so she did not know what had happened in GeoArts workshop. Naturally, she did not know about the 3 new songs. When she woke up early in the morning, she heard her maid Xiao Wei humming softly. She was attracted and wanted to ask what was going on. Of course, it's a new song. You know what I do. If it's an old song, it's impossible that I haven't heard of it. Her tone was very certain. Madame Xue not only had snow-white skin, but also a beautiful voice. She was also very proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. If it was an old song, she would definitely have heard of it. It's a new song. Miss, you should learn it quickly. When you sing it, more people will come to our Baihua Hall. Then, we will be able to suppress Jiu Art's workshop. Xiaowei looked excited. Of course, whether it was because she wanted to listen to this song was unknown to outsiders. Bah! Madame Xue's red lips opened slightly. She really looked like she was exhaling. Since it's a new song, of course you haven't heard of it. If you have the time, why don't you go and find out where it came from? Oh, I'll go right away. The lively Xiaowei agreed and rushed out of the room. When she saw Madame Xue, whose clothes were still slightly untidy, she shook her head. Xiaowei is already 16 years old, but she still does things carelessly. I don't know who will marry her in the future. When it came to marriage, Madame Xue could not help but frown slightly. She thought of her own family background and Xiaowei's family background. People like them did not have the right to pursue happiness. Perhaps the best ending for them was to grow old in Baihua Hall. But when she grew old, would there be a place for her here? Courtesan. It sounded like she was quite famous. But in the end she was just eating the rice of youth. Once she grew old, her popularity would decline day by day. At that time, there would naturally be younger and more beautiful girls to replace her. After a long time, no one would remember her glory when she was young. Just like the lyrics of the later generations said, one wrong step and you'll regret it forever. Dancers were also human. Who could she tell the pain in her heart? For the oppression of life, she swallowed her tears. Is this fate? Destined to live the rest of my life? It was because of the experience of countless predecessors that people like Madame Xue had long been prepared for it. She just wanted to earn more money while she was young. In this way she would be able to feed herself when she grew old. The appearance of a new song was often the best opportunity. It could turn a person from a nobody to a world-famous person. At that time, there would naturally be some rich benefactors. With many followers, it would be the most glorious time of their lives. Madame Xue had a feeling that this song was so fresh and different from what she had learned before. Once she learned it, she would definitely become popular. She must learn this song. In the Hu mansion, Hu Yan got up, ate and read as usual. Of course, the so-called reading was not the wonderful stories in Yang's newspaper, but the books on women's discipline and women's ethics that modern women must learn. As a woman, she had to marry and spend most of her life in her husband's family. How to be a good wife and take care of the family affairs for her husband was something that most women dealt with in their lives. If one wanted to do something, he naturally had to do it with his behavior. This required a woman to be educated and reasonable, and to learn the 3 obedience and 4 virtues. The so-called 3 obedience and 4 virtues were the foundation of a woman's life. The 3 obedience referred to obey the father before marriage, to obey the husband after marriage, and to obey the son after the husband's death. The 4 virtues referred to virtue, appearance, speech, and work. That is to say, as a woman, the most important thing was moral character, to be able to stand upright. Then it was appearance, meaning that one should be dignified, steady, and courteous, not frivolous and casual. Speech, meaning that when conversing with others, one should be able to casually add meaning, be able to understand what others are saying and know what one should and shouldn't say. And the way of managing a family, includes supporting one's husband and teaching one's children, respecting the old and loving the young, being diligent and thrifty, and other details of life. Not only that, there were also things like the 3 principles and 5 elements, etc. It was because of the etiquette and teachings in these so-called books that women's social status was not very high. If she married a man who liked her and was willing to share everything with her, it would be better. At least she still had the final say in the family. But if she met a man who did not know how to care for her, she would be like Yang Qi and Sister Yang, gradually becoming a servant. Hu Yan's grandfather, Hu Ming, was still alive. Although he was not young anymore, he was still healthy and was an important official in the imperial court. He was one of the 5 ministers entrusted to Xuanzong, and also held the position of Minister of Rights. Her father, Hu Changning, was the governor of the brocade guards and held great power. He was in his 40s and was full of vigor. With such a grandfather and father, Hu Yan did not have to worry for the time being. Even if she married into her husband's family, with such a family she would not suffer any losses. But in the end she still had to rely on herself. Relying on her mother's family was not a long-term solution. This required Hu Yan to be strong enough in order to live a life without worry. Naturally, things like female morality and female discipline were compulsory homework every day. Perhaps she was spoiled by her grandfather and father, but when Hu Yen read these books she would feel sleepy. Although she had just woken up not long ago, her eyes were still listless. Her head also seemed to lack some support. From time to time her head would fall down, but she still managed to hold on, making her look extremely adorable. Young Mississippi, Hu Yen, who was hesitating whether or not to fight 300 rounds with the Duke of Zhou, was instantly awakened by a series of screams. At that moment the Duke of Zhou was so frightened that he ran off to who knows where. After the screams, the servant girl Xiaoqing rushed into the study, bringing with her a whirlwind. If she ran 100 meters at this speed she should be able to barely pass. Chapter 70. Little Qing. Looking at the maidservant who was sweating profusely and was not reserved at all, Hu Yen pretended to be angry and scolded angrily with her small mouth. Don't you know what it means to be prudent and reserved? Look at you now, you don't look like a maidservant of the Hu family. You have been with me for so long, why can't you learn? Hu Yen still looked like she wanted to seize the opportunity to teach little Qing a lesson. Unexpectedly, little Qing did not listen to this at all. Instead, she looked at Hu Yen with a pair of bright black eyes and said, Miss, Dong Shuai went to the red light district last night. What? A simple sentence was enough to make Hu Yen, who wanted to pretend to be a miss, suddenly change her attitude. Her originally pouting mouth was already wide open, but then she suddenly closed it tightly and said with a voice that was close to gnashing her teeth, I didn't expect that he is also such a shameless man. Originally, she wanted to come here to take credit and also to prove that her identity as a spy lived up to her name. She did not expect that one sentence would cause the miss to misunderstand her meaning. Little Qing quickly corrected herself and said, Wrong. Dong Shuai did go to the red light district, but it was not an ordinary place of prostitution. He went to Jiu Art's workshop. Not only that, he also sang 3 songs there. I heard that each song made people feel refreshed and shocked. This time, little Qing did not dare to hold back in the slightest and said everything that she had heard in one breath. What? He knows how to sing. He knows music? At this moment, Hu Yen realized that she had misunderstood Yang Qindong. However, at this moment, she would not admit that she was wrong, because her body and mind had been attracted by a better topic. Not only does he know, I heard that one of the songs was about a tragic love story. It was about a long time ago. There was a firearms camp. Song Laosan's family lived next to them. They had nothing to do, and then there was a man called Little Six and a girl called Big Lotus. Little Qing also knew half of it and did not completely understand. She only heard it repeated by others. Things that passed through other people's ears were not very clear. Hu Yen was a very smart girl. She was able to make out the gist of it. He's the 6th young master. Could this Little Sixth be referring to him? Could that Delian be a girl he knows in Jianghu? Does he really know how to act out a story for fun? I heard that Dong Shuai not only knows it but he is also very good at it. After one song, even Lady Xiang, who is famous for her beauty, was ashamed. She took the initiative to give up the stage and retreated. She did not have the face to come out again. Xiaoqing thought about how she had spent some money and heard the story of the scholar who happened to be at Jiu's shop last night. She couldn't help but feel excited. Was there anything this Dong Shuai wouldn't do? Is there such a thing? Hu Yan's eyes were naturally wide open, and her face was full of joy. She felt as if she had done something great. Of course. I also heard that the top courtesan of 100 Flowers Hall, Lady Shui, who is also famous for her beauty, has rushed to Yang village in the south of the city in a sedan chair. She said that she wants to be apprenticed to a master. The more little Qing spoke, the bigger her eyes became. That was an expression of being honored, as if she was the one who had been acknowledged as a master. Hu Yen, who was listening in riddles, immediately blushed when she heard that Lady Shui was going to Yang village to be apprenticed to a master. Shameless. How can Dong Shuai accept someone like her as his disciple? If she can't go, she will just be asking for trouble. As if she had made an assertion, Hu Yen said, Dong Shuai can sing at home if he knows how to sing. Why does he have to go to Jiu Art's workshop? Isn't he afraid that the imperial censors will impeach him? As she spoke, she put her fist to her lips as if she was anxious about something. When little Qing saw this scene, she immediately laughed out loud. Miss, who are you to Dong Shuai? Why are you so anxious for him? I am him. When Hu Yen said this, she suddenly realized that she had been tricked by little Qing. Her face immediately turned red. She clenched her fist and fiercely chased after little Qing. For a moment, the 2 young women started a marathon competition in the study. In the imperial court, the officials were in a good mood today. It was probably because they saw the high-yield grain that could produce more than 20 dan of grain yesterday, which solved a big problem for the development of the great Ming dynasty. Now everyone was smiling. Even colleagues who were not close to each other nodded to each other when they saw each other, which was rare for them to be magnanimous. Zhu Qizhen was also in a good mood. Last night in Empress Qian's bedroom he was really praised. Speaking of Empress Qian, she was really well-behaved, virtuous and gentle. She was born in Haizhou. Her father, Chen Gui, was a military commander. She was made empress in 1442. From then on she only had one person in her eyes, Zhu Qizhen. In other people's eyes, Zhu Qizhen was Emperor Yingzong. But in Empress Qian's eyes he was her husband, her sky. She dedicated all her love to this person. In the history of the great Ming dynasty, Emperor Yingzong was captured by Yeshen during the Tumor Rebellion. In order to welcome Yingzong back to the court, she sent out all the assets in her palace. Every day she mourned and prayed for the gods to bless Yingzong. When she was tired, she would lie down on the ground, which caused one of her legs to be disabled. She cried all day and cried until one of her eyes was blind. Later, Emperor Yingzong returned to the capital and was imprisoned in the Nangong Palace. During this period life was difficult. Empress Qian used hand knitting to support the two of them. This lasted for 7 years. After Zhu Qizhen died, he was afraid that Empress Qian would be bullied by imperial concubine Zhou. He specially ordered Empress Qian to have the honor of being buried with me after she passed away. Could be said that Empress Qian was a model of virtue. Normally, it was very difficult to get such a person to flatter him and say a few words of praise. However, after seeing the potatoes at Yangjia village, Empress Qian acted out of character. She praised Yingzong endlessly, saying that it was because the emperor was virtuous that he was bestowed with such a high-yielding and auspicious item. She said that Yingzong should devote himself to state affairs and work hard for the prosperity of the great Ming dynasty. After receiving Empress Qian's praise, he was much more enthusiastic and proactive when serving the emperor in bed. This caused Zhu Qizhen to wake up in the morning with a face full of radiance. He was unable to contain his joy and was in a good mood. When the emperor's mood was good, the officials were naturally happy as well. During the morning court, the officials became much more amiable. Some of the matters that were reported seemed to have been resolved satisfactorily. Nearly 2 hours passed. Yingzong was several times more efficient than usual and dealt with several major matters in succession. When he saw that the officials were satisfied, Yingzong was also happy. Zhu Qizhen himself liked this kind of scene where everyone was happy. Wouldn't it be best for everyone to be happy? Good. The atmosphere in the court today is very good. The emperor and his officials are of one mind. Zhen is very happy. Zhu Qizhen said with a happy and satisfied expression. After saying this, he raised his right hand. This was his usual action. He was preparing to end court. Just as Wang Zhen, the head of the ceremony directorate, was about to shout, "End court," a person suddenly walked out of the room. This person had a short stature, and as soon as he left the room he fell to his knees and said, "Your Majesty, this subject, Su Yozhen, has a memorial." This official heard that in the red light district last night, the newly appointed Crown Prince Yang Qindong sang loudly in the Nine Arts workshop. He actually dared to share the stage with an actress. This is truly a disgrace to an official. This official asks the emperor to punish him. With such a good situation, Yingzong was in a happy mood. Suddenly, a person like this appeared. Not only did he kneel down and shout, he actually criticized the crown prince who had made a great contribution yesterday, Yang Qindong. This shout caused the originally harmonious scene between the emperor and his officials to change. When all the officials looked at Su Yozhen, their faces were filled with anger. As an official of the court, going to the red light district was a disgrace. Especially when he dared to share the stage with an actress, it was a disgrace to an official. Su Yozhen was an imperial censor in the imperial censorate and was even a 7th rank official. It wasn't wrong for him to spread rumors. However, he also needed to look at the time and situation, right? Just yesterday the emperor had just appointed Yang Qindong as the crown prince's horse Washington. Today he went to impeach him? What did this mean? Was he trying to say that the emperor was capricious? At this moment not only were the officials angry, even Yingzong's face was filled with displeasure. Wang Zhen, who was standing beside him, glared fiercely at right capital imperial censor Chen Yi. His meaning was that this was his subordinate. How could he not know when to advance or retreat and be so tactless? Regarding this, right capital imperial censor Chen Yi also had an expression of being wronged. Although he was the head of the imperial censor, Not all imperial censors needed his approval before they could submit a memorial. However, everyone who was on duty had this authority. They would give you face and greet you. However, there were countless cases where they didn't give you face and suddenly attacked you. It was clear that this time, Su Yozhen didn't communicate with him. Instead, she chose to reprimand him in front of the court. Most of the time, people who reprimand him would offend people. Usually, this kind of person wouldn't have a good ending in the future. After all, in the officialdom, if you respect me, I'll return you 10 feet. If you're good, I'm good, everyone will be good. However, if there were people who didn't want to be united and wanted to cause trouble, they would naturally not be tolerated by everyone. However, the imperial censors didn't belong to this category. Their original duty was to reprimand and complain about injustice. They would spread the news to the imperial court and deliver it to the emperor's ears. Therefore, in terms of duty, Su Yozhen's actions weren't wrong. Not only that, the emperor couldn't kill him. Not killing the imperial censors was originally set by Ming dynasty's first ancestor, Zhu Yuanzhang. Although Yingzong wasn't happy with Su Yozhen's actions, he couldn't do anything. He could only retract his right hand that he was about to raise. He then looked at the officials and asked, "Let's discuss this. How should we handle this matter?" Chapter 71. He said handle, not deal. This in itself was a clear indication of Yingzong's attitude. He'd only been promoted yesterday because he'd offered up a potato. If Yang Qindong hadn't been so young, a minor 5th rank position would have been a bit too light. Zhu Qizhen had just said that when the immortal abode opened for business, he would attend if he had the time. This was a disguised form of compensation. All of the officials were well aware of this, but none of them objected. After all, this was what Yang Qindong deserved. But it had only been a day. No. It hadn't even been 24 hours yet. Yet someone was already impeaching Yang Qindong. How was this a memorial? This was clearly a slap to the emperor's face. As the saying went, if the lord was humiliated, the subject would die. All of the officials knew that they had an obligation and a responsibility to absolve Yang Qindong today. Otherwise, if they judged others by their own standards, wouldn't it be possible for them to be rewarded one day and taken back the next? Regardless of whether the lips were gone, the teeth would feel cold, or whether officials would protect each other, the officials had no choice but to stand in Yang Qindong's shoes. However, before the officials could think of a way to express their stance, another person stepped forward. When he stepped forward with his ceremonial tablet in hand, the officials knew something was wrong. Some of them even revealed anxious expressions. Reporting to Your Majesty, this subject Yu Qian agrees with Governor Su's request. As an official of the court, he should strictly abide by the law. However, not only did he wander around the brothels, he even dared to sing on the same stage as an entertainer. This is truly a loss of face for us court officials. Your Majesty, please issue an edict to punish him. As he spoke, the proud left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian, knelt on the ground and bowed. Yu Qian, courtesy name Tingyi, was from Qiantang. He had studied diligently since his youth and had lofty ambitions. He admired Wen Tianxiang's integrity and had kept Wen Tianxiang's image at his side for decades. This Yu Qian was not the great master who smoked, permed his hair and drank wine, but he was actually one of the loyal and famous ministers of the Ming dynasty. He attached importance to reputation and integrity, to fame and fortune. When he died, his family did not have any wealth left. He attached importance to dying for a benevolent cause, to death. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, he fought to the death in Walla without retreating. He attached importance to the country, to the emperor. After the Tumu Fort rebellion, when we elected Zhu Qiyu as the emperor, we claimed that we were doing it for the sake of the country, not for our own personal interests. Yu Qian was so strong that even Wang Zhen couldn't do anything to him. He was one of the few officials who made Steward Wang feel helpless. At this moment he stood out and supported Su Yozhen, making the situation even more complicated and serious. This subject has a different opinion. The Minister of Revenue, Wang Zhua, stepped forward, as if he was afraid that there would be other officials who would agree with him. Zhu Qizhen, who was frowning, suddenly heard an official say that he had a different opinion. He was startled and said, "Speak." Your Majesty, although the Nine Arts Workshop is in the red light district, it is not a place where one can seek pleasure. It can be considered a pure land. Yang Shima going there isn't a violation of the rules. Wang Zhua spoke first, separating the Nine Arts Workshop from the red light district. This was his excuse. Secondly, of the 6 arts of a gentleman, there is the word, music. Yang Shima created Yang Bao and his many talents have long been known to the world. It is nothing much for him to sing a few songs. On the contrary, this subject feels that this is because he understands the affairs of the people and can show the style of a minister. A minister is omnipotent and knows everything. Thirdly, Yang Shima is still young and has just entered the capital. It is inevitable that he would be attracted by the prosperity here and do some inappropriate things. This is completely understandable. With these 3 points, this subject pleads for your majesty to be merciful and not punish Yang Shima to show your majesty's magnanimity. After speaking, Wang Zhou kowtowed to the ground and shouted, "Long live the emperor," before kowtowing again. The moment Wang Zhou stepped forward, the Minister of Personnel Wang Ji stepped forward as well. This morning his grandson Wang Si came forward to pay his respects. Kneeling on the ground, he recounted the events that happened at the Nine Arts workshop in detail. Using his own words, if not for his provocation, Yang Qindong wouldn't have gone on stage to sing, and there wouldn't have been any trouble. If the censors were to impeach him, he hoped that his grandfather would speak up for him. Otherwise, if Yang Qindong were to be punished as an accomplice, he wouldn't be in a good position either. After hearing the story, Wang Ji was infuriated. This grandson of his was good at everything. He was hardworking in his studies and diligent in his work. However, he loved to be in the limelight too much and he loved to wander around those red light districts. He had already brought up this matter more than once. Yet, not only was his grandson unrepentant, he even caused a huge commotion. As the royal court was about to start, Wang Ji didn't have the time to reprimand his grandson. He only wanted to talk about it after he returned from the royal court. However, he didn't expect that someone would still use this as an excuse. Seeing that the emperor and the officials had the same attitude, Wang Ji hesitated for a moment before stepping forward to speak up for Yang Qindong. "Your Majesty, this subject believes that Lord Wang Zhu's words are appropriate. Who hasn't been young and frivolous? Furthermore, Yang Shima's song has nothing to do with the political situation. Please give him a chance on account of his contributions." After Wang Ji finished speaking, he picked up his ceremonial tablet and knelt on the ground with a plop. Even though Yang Shima's actions sound ridiculous, it is just a joke among the young. This subject believes that there is no need to discuss it in the royal court. This old subject hopes that your majesty won't pay too much attention to it. The Minister of Rights, Hu Kuang, also slowly knelt on the ground. As the Minister of Rights, even he believed that Yang Qindong's actions didn't violate the rules of etiquette. Naturally, others couldn't say anything. Including Hu Kuang, there were 3 important officials speaking up for Yang Qindong. With these 3 officials at the front, the other officials all knelt on the ground and voiced their agreement. Even Wang Zhen, who was standing next to the emperor, took this opportunity to whisper to Zhu Qizhen, "Your Majesty, Yang Shima's actions aren't harmful at all, so there is no need to pursue this matter. Your Majesty can have him open a restaurant and do business, so what's the big deal about singing a few songs? Your Majesty is completely free to make your own decisions. In addition, the imperial censor's word should also be rewarded, and this matter can be settled." The immortal abode was about to open, and Wang Zhen had a 10% stake in it. Who knew how much more income they would get in that month? If something were to happen now, the immortal abode would definitely be implicated. This was tantamount to harming their own interests, so they naturally had to speak up. With the officials pleading for leniency and Wang Zhen's words, Ying Zong understood what was going on. After lightly rubbing his forehead, he spoke in a clear voice. "This subject's words are reasonable. Yang Shima is merely young and restless, and he has just arrived in the capital. Everything is new to him, so it is reasonable for him to do something that is slightly out of line. There is no need to pursue this matter any further. As for Supervisor Su, he is diligent and responsible in his work. He will be rewarded and promoted to the position of Supervisor of the Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience." The Imperial Censorate's Bureau of Experience was a 6th-rank official. Compared to his previous 7th-rank official position, it was a 2-rank promotion. This could be considered an explanation for this person's actions. The officials were immediately overjoyed, all of them cheering for the emperor's wisdom. Just when everyone thought that the matter had been resolved and all the officials were about to stand up, who would have thought that the newly promoted imperial censor Su Yozhen would continue to kowtow to the ground and ask, "Your Majesty, if Yang Shima continues to sing songs in the future, can you make an exception and not pursue this matter? His Majesty has already promoted you, but you still want to bite on this matter and not let it go. This means that you don't know how to do things, you don't know how to conduct yourself." For a moment, some of the officials looked at him with stern eyes. The feeling that Su Yozhen gave them before was not like this. This person was smooth and slick and very good at dealing with people. Transferring him to the Imperial Censorate was just a way to gain experience and accumulate experience. But why was this person so stubborn today? Did he want to provoke the Emperor's displeasure? At this moment, Ing Zong was indeed a little angry. Seeing that Su Yozhen still wanted to hold on to this matter and not let it go, he loudly reprimanded. Zhen said, Yang Shima is young and restless and he is multi-talented. Yang Shima's story was his doing. Since writing a story can be accepted by everyone, so what if he sings a song? In the future there is no need to report such matters. If you have the time, why don't you observe the suffering of the common people and see if the officials are doing their best? It was clear that Ing Zong had a problem with the Imperial Censorate. Right, Imperial Censorate Qin Yi lowered his head and did not dare to say anything. Feeling that Ing Zong's anger was not good, the other officials naturally did not dare to say anything. Only Su Yozhen, who did not know where he got the courage, actually knelt on the ground and shouted, "This official knows. In the future, if there is anything related to Yang Shima, it will not be reported." Ing Zong also angrily glared at Su Yozhen. Then, without waiting for Wang Zhen to call for the court to end, he got up and left the dragon throne. The officials also left with the emperor. Even Right Imperial Censorate Qin Yi did not pay attention to Su Yozhen, who was still kneeling on the ground, and left with the other officials. Soon there were only two people left in the entire court. One was the kneeling Su Yozhen, and the other was the left assistant minister of the Ministry of War, Yu Qian. Official Su, quickly get up. The emperor and the officials have all left. Reaching out his hand to help Su Yozhen up, Yu Qian's face was filled with admiration. Yu Qian was upright and plain-spoken. Even with Wang Zhen's power, he did not lower his head, and the other party could not do anything to him. It was very difficult to make such a person admire others. But now Su Yozhen did it. Being helped up by Yu Qian, Su Yozhen was flattered. "Official Yu, many thanks, many thanks." "Official Su, there is no need to be like this. I should be the one thanking you. Imperial censors should be like Official Su, not fearing power, and report to the emperor. Even if the person you are referring to has made a great contribution, it is still the same." When he said these words, Yu Qian's words were righteous and his face was solemn. Not only did he say this, in fact he had always done things this way. However, he did not notice that at this moment Su Yozhen's face was filled with shame. Only he himself knew why he would do such a thing today. His heart was far from being as pure and holy as Yu Qian seemed. On the contrary, it was extremely dirty. It was just that it was not enough for people to understand. Official Yu is too modest, too modest. Drenched in cold sweat, Su Yozhen was afraid that he would unknowingly give himself away if he stayed, so he cupped his fists and bid farewell. Yu Qian was left standing alone in the court, his gaze seemingly piercing through the imperial city, piercing through the capital, and reaching the Yang clan manor in the southern part of the city. "Yang Qindong, Yang Qindong, first you made a report to control the direction of public opinion, and then you made such a ruckus the moment you arrived in the capital. Just what are you thinking? Are you an official or a merchant? Are you loyal or treacherous?" Chapter 72. Yesterday could be said to be a busy day. In the morning, Yang Qindong first beat 7th brother-in-law Wang Go, then beat the drum of the imperial court, went to the imperial court, saw the emperor, and presented him with the auspicious and high-yielding potato. In the afternoon he saw his eldest brother, second brother, and the others whom he had not seen for a long time. In the evening he went to the red light district, 9 arts workshop, and made 3 astonishing songs. After returning to the Yang family manor, Yang Qindong fell asleep immediately. It was not until the sun was high in the sky that he got out of bed with the help of his maid Qiao Yin. It wasn't that Yang Qindong insisted on using Qiao Yin's help. For this matter he had refused many times. Until one day Qiao Yin cried in front of him and asked if the young master didn't want her anymore. This caused Yang Qindong to have no choice but to give in. It had to be said that the men of this era were very fortunate. After tidying up properly, the kitchen maid Yi Qiu had already prepared breakfast on the round table. As he ate in big bites, he listened to Tiger's Mane, who was standing beside him, report the matters of today's imperial court. "Young master, after Su Yozhen received our money, she indeed went to court today to impeach you. After that, the officials pleaded for leniency. The emperor also said that in the future, there is no need to report anything related to you." Tiger's Mane widened his eyes and looked at Yang Qindong with a gaze full of admiration. His reverence was like a torrential river that flowed endlessly. Just last night, when he left the Nine Arts workshop, Yang Qindong handed the task to Tiger's Mane. He had someone bring enough money to find an imperial censor called Su Yozhen. Then he did the same thing. When he first received the task, Tiger's Mane was naturally very puzzled. He couldn't understand what the young master was trying to do. Spending money to hire someone to impeach him? Was he crazy? However, after a long period of training, his nature of obedience had been cultivated. In the end, he still did as he was told. Sure enough, after finding Su Yozhen's house, he snuck into the courtyard and took out 2,000 taels of silver. That person's eyes lit up, and he only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. This led to today's morning court session. All of this seemed to be because someone was jealous of Yang Qindong's rise in power. Everyone followed this train of thought. Who would have thought that this was just a self-written and self-directed play by the sixth young master? Taking advantage of the fact that he had just offered up an auspicious item, there would certainly be no result if someone tried to impeach him. The ministers were thinking about dying if the lips were cold and the teeth were cold. The emperor was thinking about his own face. All of this was calculated by Yang Qindong, so he took this risk. The benefits of taking the risk were obvious. In the future, no one in the imperial court would bring up this matter again. In this way he could openly be a rich man, a true official businessman, a person who was recognized by everyone as rich. Everyone knew that he had money, so when he did things, it would naturally be much smoother, and he would have fewer worries. As for why he used Su Yozhen and not someone else, this was the advantage of Yang Qindong's prophetic ability. Su Yozhen had a short stature and an ordinary appearance, but he was very intelligent. He liked fame and was good at reading people's expressions. In history, when Ming was restored, he had made a great contribution. Later on, he became an important minister with great power. During this time, he had also engaged in open and secret struggles with Shi Heng and Chao Jixiang within the ruling class. This kind of person clearly had some ability and he valued benefits. He also had the identity of an imperial censor. If he didn't use him, wouldn't it be a waste? The ancients had long said that it was better to offend a gentleman than a villain. Based on this principle, Yang Qindong interacted with a gentleman based on the principle of respect. Towards villains, he used benefits to pull them together. In this way he could take care of all aspects and eliminate many dangers invisibly. Naturally, people like Su Yozhen should be used well. If he really had talent, he would be given the opportunity to show it. But when it came to sincere friendship, it was far from enough. Not bad. After listening to Tiger's Mane's report of the situation, Yang Qindong smiled with satisfaction. Your people in the security bureau have worked hard. Reward the relevant personnel with 100 taels of silver. As the bureau chief, you can deal with it as you see fit. Rewards should be given for meritorious service. This was a principle that Yang Qindong deeply remembered. Only then would more people be willing to work for you and do things with peace of mind. Thank you, young master. Tiger's Mane said with slight excitement. 100 taels of silver was naturally nothing to the security bureau, which spent money like water. What was important was Yang Qindong's satisfaction with their work. This was what they pursued. By the way, young master, a sedan chair has arrived outside the Yang family manor. One of the ladies even handed over a name card. Where's the name card? Yang Qindong asked as he put the last bite of breakfast into his mouth and clapped his hands. That is with Yin. Tiger's Mane lowered his head, not daring to look at Yang Qindong. Hee. Yang Qindong smiled, then got up and went to the study next door. Sure enough, there was a name card neatly placed on the wooden table with beautiful words written on it. Yin was very sensible. She wouldn't make things difficult for Yang Qindong on important matters. She just wanted to throw a tantrum and let people know that she knew some things, and even some things that she didn't like. Yang Qindong also saw this as another kind of beauty for girls, the beauty of jealousy. He knew that this was Yin's way of reminding him not to get too close to the lady who came to see him. He smiled and took the name card. The name of the name card was for the sixth young master Yang Qindong. When he opened it, a fragrant smell immediately assailed his nostrils. There was also a line of beautiful words written on it. Your servant, Xiao Yuxue, greets the sixth young master Yang Qindong. Please don't refuse. Jun Yuxue? Yang Qindong took the name card and walked out of the study to Tiger's Mane, who had a respectful expression on his face. Knowing that this was a question for him, Tiger's Mane thought for a moment before the identity of this person popped up in his mind. Young master, Xiao Yuxue is Lady Xue's name. Oh, so it's Lady Xue. She's smart. By the way, is Lady Xiang here yet? Yang Chendong recalled Dong Hanxiang's struggling expression last night. No. Tiger's Mane shook his head and scolded Lady Xiang in his heart for not being sensible enough. The young master Yang Chendong personally went to your 9 arts workshop and sang 3 songs. You don't know how to take advantage of such an opportunity? It really makes one speechless. Yang Chendong's face clearly flashed with a hint of loneliness. It was unknown whether he was feeling pity for Lady Xiang or lamenting the outdated views of people nowadays. Forget it. Since Lady Shui came in person, I'll just meet her. If she's a talent, I'm willing to teach the young master Yang Chendong a few things. This is Lady Xiang's fortune, Tiger's Mane said enviously when he heard that this lady could be taught by the young master Yang Chendong in person. As the Yang family system expanded, the chances of being taught by the 6th young master Yang Chendong in person became fewer and fewer. Whenever there was an opportunity, everyone would try their best to seize it. How about this? Inform the people to enter the manor. Also, find Xiaoyin and arrange for someone to send out the things I prepared when I returned last night. Remember, don't miss out on a single family. Send out all the gifts to the manors of the 5th rank officials in the capital. Also, don't miss out on the families of my brothers and sisters. Yang Chendong didn't want to offend people by sending out gifts. That wouldn't be worth it. Yes. Tiger's Mane naturally knew about this and immediately agreed. However, he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked hesitant. What's wrong? Is there something else? Yang Chendong knew that Tiger's Mane had something to ask, so he looked at him curiously. Our people from the Bureau of Security have found out that someone is asking around about the young master's past. Tiger's Mane had just said this when he felt the atmosphere in the room become oppressive. He saw Yang Chendong's expression become extremely solemn, even a little cold. Who is it? The young master. It's not just anyone. It's Hu Yin, the granddaughter of the Minister of Rights, Hu Yin, the daughter of the Imperial Guard's town supervisor, Hu Changning. This is some information on her. Tiger's Mane took out a small book from his bosom and turned to leave. This matter wasn't about someone worrying about the 6th young master's safety. It was highly likely that it was about the love between a man and a woman. Even though he was the young master's subordinate, he couldn't interfere in this matter. It's actually a woman? Yang Chendong was also a little dizzy from this sudden turn of events. When he looked at the small book, it recorded in detail about Hu Yen. It also emphasized that this woman was already 16 years old. However, until now, no one had discovered that someone had gone to bring her forward. After an investigation by the Bureau of Security, they found out that it was Hu Changning's idea. The small book also recorded that Hu Yin was educated and well-mannered. Moreover, she was as beautiful as a fairy. She was also clever and cute. Looking at this, how could Yang Chendong not know what this meant? At this moment, the matter of Hu Zhangning breaking into the Yang family's old house in Fangjianing Mansion was naturally figured out in an instant. At this moment, Yang Chendong understood that Hu Zhangning's worship of his parents at that time was fake, and his observation of himself was real. The daughter of the Hu family seems to come from a good background. Yang Chendong thought and smiled. No wonder Tiger's Man reported the situation to him after being pestered like this. He must have known the importance of this matter. To be honest, if the Bureau of Security hadn't found out that someone was investigating the 6th young master this time, they naturally wouldn't have noticed Hu Yen, and the following things wouldn't have happened. Well, it's better to let nature take its course when it comes to love. After reading the small book, Yang Chendong put it in a small cabinet in the study. For him, it was still too early to talk about love. How to successfully lay a good foundation was the most important thing. In the side hall of the Yang family's manor, Madame Shui was sitting with the servant girl Xiaowei. Even though he was seated, he still had a nervous expression on his face. His face was flushed red, making him look even more enchanting. Chapter 73. Seeing Xiao Yushua's nervousness, Xiaowei tried to cheer her up. Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. You can relax. Many childs and young master from noble families have spent money to go to Baihua Hall just to see you. The 6th young master is also a man. He must be the same as them. No, it's not the same. Madame Shui retorted. You've read the wonderful stories in Yang's Daily. And the song you hummed today, the touching love story. How can the person who wrote these things be the same as the other young master? It's not the same. Before they met, Yang Chendong had become a great figure in Madame Shui's heart. It was no wonder that she could not keep calm and was so nervous. Xiaowei saw that Xiao Yushua seemed to be possessed, so she wanted to comfort her. But at this moment, footsteps came from outside the room. Then Yang Qindong, dressed in cyan, walked into the side hall accompanied by the maid Xiao Yin. He looked indifferent, and his chin was slightly raised at a 45-degree angle. His chiseled face, especially the confident smile on his face, seemed to have a magic power that deeply attracted Madame Shui and Xiao Wei's eyes. Xiao Yin also noticed the two women's behavior and immediately raised her head proudly. In her eyes, the sixth young master was undoubtedly the most perfect man. It was reasonable for other women to look at her young master in this way. While they were looking at Yang Qindong, he was also looking at the two women. In particular, Madame Shui gave him a feeling of déjà vu. Upon closer inspection, he realized that this woman actually had the shadow of Su Qing, an actress from the future. Especially the two shallow dimples on her face, which made her look even more similar. She had a face similar to Su Qing's. Her skin was as white as snow, but she was younger in age. She also had an enchanting temperament. Men who saw her would not only be aroused, but would also have a very primitive behavior. Fortunately, Yang Qindong's self-control was strong enough to suppress the moment his body reacted. Then, he revealed an extremely charming male smile and sat down at the head of the table. He opened the crescent-shaped folding fan in his hand and gently fanned it, looking like an elegant and handsome young master. It was not until Yang Qindong found a chair and sat down that Madame Shui woke up. Thinking of her performance just now, she couldn't help but blush. Then she bent down and said, "Dong Hanshui greets Dong Shui. Please get up." Yang Qindong smiled and stretched out his hand to support Madame Snow. Madame Snow took the opportunity to stand up. Then the sixth young master said with a smile, "I've long heard that Madame Shui is known as half the beauty of the city and is proficient in the beauty of melody. I wonder if I have the honor of listening to the sound from outer space?" Yang Qindong's words made Madame Snow feel relieved. She was most afraid that he would say something about his identity. If so, she who was originally a lowly person didn't know how to know. Now that he took the initiative to talk about music, she was very happy. In that case, I'll make a fool of myself. Madame Snow didn't dare to refuse Yang Qindong's request, not to mention that she had taken the initiative to ask for his help today. She had to be more humble. Madame Snow agreed softly. Then she bowed and said to her maid Xiao Wei, "Prepare the guzheng." Xiao Wei was capable and agile. She quickly placed the guzheng she brought with her in the side hall. Madame Snow walked slowly to the guzheng and sat down. She looked up at Yang Qindong and smiled charmingly. Then her slender fingers fell on the guzheng and gently plucked the strings. "You love me, I love you, 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 I love you." The poem Locking the South Branch and Molding Clay Figurines was written by Zhao Mingfu's wife, Guan Sheng, a master of calligraphy and painting in the early Yuan dynasty. The background story was that when Zhao Mingfu was 50 years old, he wanted to imitate the famous scholars at that time to take a concubine, but he was too embarrassed to tell his wife. His wife knew and wrote this poem. After reading My Love poem, Zhao Mingfu was deeply moved and never mentioned taking a concubine again. When Madame Snow sang this song, it had a special charm. It really showed the love of a wife to her husband. For a moment, Xiao Yin, who was standing aside, was mesmerized. There were even tears in her eyes. At this moment, she seemed to see the feeling she should have when her husband married a concubine in the near future. However, Yang Qindong was not asked at all. This had something to do with the fact that he was not used to these greasy songs. At the same time, it was also because he was busy staring at Madame Snow's towering breasts. It had been 3 years since he came to this world. Although he did not get close to women on the grounds that he was still growing, and he did not even have sex with the beautiful Xiao Yin, it did not mean that he did not need it. It was just that there were too many things to do and too much energy to think about it for the time being. Today there was no one else in the room except himself and the 3 beautiful girls. The budding of youth was somewhat uncontrollable. In particular, Madame Snow's figure was so beautiful and her skin was so white. He could not help but stare at her breasts a few more times. Madame Snow spent all day in the red light district and had seen all kinds of men. Among them, there were many men who would stare at her figure endlessly. Some of them even had very bold gazes. She felt that those men were more vulgar. Sometimes she would feel a little embarrassed and even a little disgusted. However, today, facing the 6th young master's gaze, not only did she not feel disgusted, but she also felt a little proud, and a little happy and secretly happy. Why was she not angry but happy? Was it because there was some kind of attraction to the sixth young master that made her not blame him at all? Or was it because she knew that he was a talented man and wanted to get close to him? Madame Snow did not know what she was thinking at the moment. However, Yang Qindong hurriedly withdrew his expression after hearing the song. At the same time, he deliberately straightened his body and used the corner of his eye to observe Qiao Yin, who was standing next to him. Fortunately, Qiao Yin had listened to the song and was completely immersed in it. She did not notice that she had lost her composure just now. Relieved, he smiled at Madame Snow, as if only she and he knew what had happened just now. He coughed softly and said, "Madame Snow's voice is really like the sound of nature, intoxicating. You flatter me, Dong Shuai. I really made a fool of myself. I heard that yesterday in the GeoArts workshop, Dong Shuai shocked the world with 3 songs. That was the sound of nature. Now, the streets and alleys of the capital are talking about it." While being modest, Madame Snow secretly pointed out what had happened last night. She also took the opportunity to tell Yang Qindong that she had come here for the 3 songs. Haha, it's just a casual composition. How can it be the sound of nature? Yang Qindong shook his head and did not admit that the song yesterday was exquisite and wonderful. Madame Snow was a little anxious when she saw that Yang Qindong had denied this matter. She thought that the 6th young master was rejecting her, so she said, "Dong Shuai, I did this for the new song. Since this morning when I heard the new song on the street, I was intoxicated and could not control myself. I sent a letter to you. Please don't refuse. As long as you are willing to teach me the new song, you can tell me any request or condition. I will do my best to satisfy you." When she said the word satisfy, Madame Snow's face was so delicate that it looked like water could be squeezed out of it. Seeing this, Yang Qindong was also very tempted. If Qiao Yin and Xiao Wei were not present, he was afraid that he would not be able to control his body. Well, only one of the 3 songs is suitable for Madame Snow. No matter how good the song is, it has to be suitable for the person. Yang Qindong forced himself to suppress the thoughts in his heart and said with a smile, "It's just 1 song. That's better than nothing. As long as you can sing 1 song, I think the business of 100 Flowers Hall will be good." Madame Snow was a little disappointed when she heard Yang Qindong's answer, but she quickly thought it through. She was not related to the Dong Shuai, and it was already a great favor that he was willing to teach her a song. How could she dare to ask for more? Madame Snow accepted the reality in her heart. She bowed again and said, "Please teach me Dong Shuai." Seeing that Madame Snow was thirsty for a song, Yang Qindong did not put on airs. Instead he said to Qiao Yin, "Bring me the guitar hanging in young master's bedroom." Qiao Yin had long wanted to hear young master's new song, so she agreed and left. Soon she returned with the guitar and handed it to Yang Qindong. Madame Snow was very curious when she saw the instrument that looked like a pipa. It was the first time she had seen such a thing in her life. She wondered if it was the instrument in the Dong Shuai's hands. While she was thinking, the guitar was gently played and a pleasant sound came out. Then Yang Qindong's unique baritone voice slowly rang out. "The tip of the peach leaf is sharp, the willow leaf is holding up the sky. In its place, Lord Ming, listen to me carefully." The words were compact and there were no superfluous words, nor was there any decadent tone. It was just talking about the most ordinary and ordinary thing. However, the unique melody made people unable to help but like it. In fact, at the beginning of the 3rd time, the 3 women could not help but hum along with it. Yang Qindong's pronunciation was very clear. Compared to last night at the 9 Arts workshop, he sang more seriously. The 3 girls naturally listened to him very clearly. By the 5th time, Madame Snow had mastered most of the song with her unique ability to understand music. Except for some parts that were not very accurate, she had mastered 70% to 80% of the song. Chapter 74. Haha, not bad. Yang Qindong nodded with satisfaction after listening to Madame Shui's song. He had to admit that this woman was really talented in this aspect. Being praised by Yang Qindong, Madame Shui was happy and shy at the same time. She was also very happy because she could meet immortal Dong Shuai and learn a new song. What he did next made Madame Shui even more excited and her heart beat faster. "Madame Shui, you seem to like playing the zither. I'll teach you a new song. It's played with the zither. What do you think?" "Thank you so much, Dong Shuai." Hearing that she was lucky enough to hear the 2nd song, Madame Snow was so excited that she kept bowing with her hands folded in front of her. "Well, there are no outsiders here. You don't have to be so polite." Yang Qindong was tired of watching Madame Shui say, "Thank you," a dozen times, so he waved his hand and said casually, But this sentence made Madame Xue blush. The fact that there were no outsiders here obviously made her think the wrong way. As Yang Qindong spoke, he had already arrived in front of the guzheng. Then he leaned over and plucked the strings twice. In the end he shook his head. With his level he could barely play the guitar. He really couldn't play the guzheng. Fortunately, the tune of the next song was not complicated. Given Madame Xue's ability to understand it, it would not be a problem for her to learn it after he sang it softly. How about this? I'll sing softly and you'll compose the music. What do you think? Yang Qindong didn't say that he didn't know how to play the zither. Madame Xue was more than happy to sing with Yang Qindong. But she was worried that she couldn't play it well, so she asked nervously and excitedly, Can I? If I say you can, you can. If you can't, you can. Yang Qindong laughed heartily and agreed. Then he held the folding fan in his hand and paced back and forth. His lips slowly opened and closed as he sang, When will the bright moon appear? With a cup of wine in my hand I ask the clear sky. I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace. I want to ride the wind and return home, but I'm afraid it's too cold at the top of the Jade Palace. When I dance it's like dancing in the shadows. It's not like being in the human world. A water melody of Su Shi of the Song dynasty slowly appeared. It was just an ancient poem, but after being processed by Yang Qindong, it became a very light and unique song. Once the song was played, it immediately gave people a refreshing feeling. It made people feel more intimate and at the same time, they also experienced a different kind of beautiful music. Yang Qindong sang softly, and Madame Xue began to play the guzheng with encouragement in her eyes. In the beginning they didn't cooperate well because they weren't familiar with each other. But after a while they had a tacit understanding. When the song was played together, it really gave people a feeling that this song should only exist in the heavens and could only be heard a few times in the human world. After singing softly for 2 more times, Yang Qindong stopped talking and let Madame Xue do everything. Madame Xue talked and sang by herself. Her charm soon surpassed Yang Qindong's and was far above his. The song made Xiao Yin and Xiao Wei feel very emotional. Why didn't they think of making this song into a song before? At this moment, their gazes towards Yang Qindong were filled with worship and reverence. Wu Mansion. Suddenly, a horse carriage drove in from the side door, and a burly man jumped down from the carriage. He looked at the Hu clan's gatekeeper and said, This is an invitation card from my family's lord. The gatekeeper stepped forward and respectfully picked it up. When he saw the words, Crown Prince washes his horse, Yang Qindong written on it, he understood. After knowing the other party's identity, he smiled and said, What can I do for you, Lord Yang? It's like this. My lord has developed a new kind of soft paper called toilet paper, which is prepared for the nobles after they go to the toilet. As he spoke, the burly man held 2 bags of things in his hands and handed them to the gatekeeper. One is for Minister Hu and the other is for Lord Hu. Please accept it. After putting down the bags, the burly man left. If Hu Zhangning was here right now, he would definitely recognize him as the Beta Persei who had fought with his 2 subordinates in Jianghu Mansion and won. The same scene didn't only appear in front of the Hu Mansion, but also in front of all 5th-rank officials in the capital. In the end, Tiger's Mane led the team to deliver the toilet paper to the Imperial Palace. The difference was that the Imperial Palace received a larger proportion, 10 large bags. The other officials only received 1 bag, while the 2 5th-rank officials in the Hu family naturally received 2 bags. Everyone who received Yang Qindong's gift accepted it. Even Yu Qian, the Ministry of War's attendant who called himself Wen Qianxiang, received a gift. For the family this was something that rarely happened. The reason why Yu Qian accepted the gift was because he wanted to see what the Crown Prince washes his horse was up to. What was he up to? However, when he saw that the gift was actually toilet paper used after he went to the toilet, he was stunned speechless. This thing was indeed very soft, and was naturally an excellent item for cleansing the body. However, giving this kind of thing was somewhat lacking in the grandeur of a refined scholar. Thinking that this thing probably wasn't worth much, Yu Qian left it here and didn't return it, which made his wife overjoyed. Wu Mansion. The gatekeeper took the 2 bags of toilet paper to the backyard and met with Hu Zhangning's wife. Hu Zhangning's wife, Hu Yushi, was already old and no longer managed the backyard. The Hu family didn't split up, but Hu Zhangning's wife was in charge of the backyard. Madame whose surname was Wang, and she was known as Hu Wangshi. When she saw the 2 large bags of toilet paper, she blushed. After she figured out what they were for, she was even more speechless. This 6th young master was also messing around. How could such a thing be so publicly delivered to the residents and even handed to the gatekeeper? Scholars loved face. Although eating, drinking, and going to the toilet was a long-term emotion that no one could avoid, it wasn't good to give such things so publicly. However, since it was already delivered, it wasn't good to return it. Thus, she ordered people to prepare to send the things to the backyard's warehouse. As for whether it was useful or not, she, a woman, couldn't personally try it out due to her face. However, before the item could be sent out, the sound of hurried panting and panicked running could be heard. The person who came was Hu Yan. She heard the maid, Xiao Qing, say that the sixth young master sent someone to send a gift. She was overjoyed and ran over to take a look. Mother, the East Marshal sent something to our residence? As soon as she entered the hall, Hu Yan's beautiful voice, which was like an oriole's, sounded before she could stand firm. Yen'er, slow down. Don't fall again. You're almost a big girl. Why are you still so careless? Seeing that it was her daughter who came, Hu Wangshi couldn't help but say coquettishly, Mother, where are the things that the East Marshal sent us? Hu Yan didn't listen to her mother's nagging but asked anxiously. That's it. Knowing that if she didn't answer, her daughter would continue to ask, Hu Wangshi simply pointed to the 2 bags of things on the ground that were about to be put into the warehouse. Ah! Hu Yan first exclaimed, then walked in front of the 2 bags and casually picked one up to take a closer look. However, it seemed that this wasn't enough. She directly opened the other bag, pulled it out and rubbed it in her hands. Seeing Hu Yan's actions, Hu Wangshi's face turned red and said, Yan, what are you doing? This is, but what? What is this thing? It feels so weak? Is it used to write big words? It doesn't seem right. Even though Hu Yan thought that she was smart, when she saw the toilet paper for the first time, she still couldn't see its use. Yan, come here. Hu Wangshi, who had always been educated to be well-mannered, felt that some words were too shameful to say. She pulled her daughter in front of her and then whispered something in her ear. Ah! Hu Yan's face changed. First she blushed, then she spat softly and said in a voice that only she could hear, How shameless of you to give me such things. Yan, what did you say? Hu Wangshi obviously didn't hear clearly. Nothing. Hu Yan panicked and said, I just said that this thing looks soft and seems to be suitable for that. How about this? I'll take it away first. If it's useful, I'll send it back to you. After saying that, without waiting for Hu Wangshi's agreement, she and little Qing each carried a bag of toilet paper, turned around and ran out. Hey, slow down, slow down. Hu Wangshi didn't care about the 2 bags of toilet paper. She didn't know its use at all. She was just worried that her daughter would run too fast and fall down. This was like a small episode in her life. Hu Wangshi didn't care at all. Not only that, many officials who received the toilet paper didn't care too much. It wasn't until the next day when they went to the imperial court that they realized how precious the toilet paper was. In the side hall of the Yang Manor, Madame Shui learned 2 new songs, Exploring Qingshui River, and Wishing We Last Forever. She was very happy. After singing it a few times and receiving Yang Qindong's affirmation, she was overjoyed. Thank you for teaching me Dong Shui. But I don't know if these 2 new songs can be sung in Baihua Hall, Madame Shui said carefully when she was talking. She was afraid that Yang Qindong wouldn't agree. No problem. You can sing them if you want. Yang Qindong smiled. It always took a process for a new song to be accepted by the world. Baihua Hall could expand its influence. Why not? As for the copyright of the new songs, Yang Qindong didn't care at all. He didn't know how many songs like this there were. If it weren't for the fact that the lyrics and music of these 2 songs were clean and suitable for zither and pipa, he could teach more. Seeing that Yang Qindong agreed, Madame Shui was overjoyed. Chapter 75. Yang Qindong did not stop her. Although he could not be Lady Shui's master, he had still taught her, so it was only right for her to bow to him. After bowing, she saw that it was noon and knew that Dong Shui was probably going to eat. Not daring to disturb him, she happily left the Yang clan manor with her maid Xiao Wei. Not long after they left, news came from the capital. Tonight, the 100 Flowers Hall of the Red Light District would be performing 2 new songs. They would only be sung once, so there were not many chances, so please make good use of them. The moment this news came out, many young masters who believed themselves to be elegant began to make arrangements with the young master to attend 100 Flowers Hall that night. Putting aside how lively the city had become in the Yang clan manor, as Qiaoyin ate the delicious food that Yi Qior had made, she softly asked Yang Qindong, Young master, didn't you say that you wanted to take Lady Shui and Lady Xiang for your own use? You said that they were both talents, so why didn't you say a single word about them? Yang Qindong ate the food in his mouth as he shook his head and said, "Haste makes waste. If I act now, it will inevitably make people think that this young master is taking advantage of the situation. Let's wait. Fortunately, there is still time." Yang Qindong naturally had his own plans. Not saying it now did not mean that he would not say it in the future. It was just that the time was not right. He understood the principle of more haste, less speed. Although with his current status, it was not impossible for him to forcefully take her away. However, if he did so, it would inevitably give others a reason to criticize him. He was afraid that his reputation of bullying women would be tarnished. This was not something that he wanted to see. In comparison, Yang Qindong preferred the feeling of success when the conditions were right. But before that, he still had many other things to do. For example, there was one thing that he needed Xiaoyin to do. How about the young master arrange something for you?" Upon hearing that there was something to do, Xiaoyin hurriedly put down her bowl and chopsticks, an excited look on her face. "What is it?" "It's not difficult. I just want to make a trip to the capital and find some children between the ages of 14 and 18. Both men and women are fine. 50 of each. They must have good looks, good figures, and must be as tall as possible. Then we will hire all of them, sign a 3-year contract, and bring them back to the manor." Yang Qindong also put down his bowl and chopsticks, thinking of another plan, and said with a smile. Yang Qindong was about to start looking for the Immortal Abode's attendants. A total of 100 people were prepared. Among them, the men were waiters, all wearing black jackets. The women were waitresses, all wearing black cheongsams. This was the uniform that was put on. This would give you a very shocking first impression. However, it wasn't enough for them to merely be dressed in the same way. They also needed to be consistent in their pace and actions. In addition, they also needed to have a deep understanding of the Immortal Abode's range of experience. If a guest were to ask them about something they didn't understand, they would know how to explain it and what to do next. The matter of the clothes was easy to resolve. Long before he left Crimson City, the head of the garment factory, Zhou Hua, had already made the clothes according to his request. Now they were all in the Yang family village. However, it took a lot of time to develop their physical qualities. For this reason, when Yang Qindong handed the task to Xiaoyin, he especially emphasized, "Don't be afraid of spending money. As long as someone is willing to work for us, we will give them 2 taels of silver per month. However, you must also tell them that those who can endure hardship and can read are priority. If someone can't take it and wants to leave, not only will they not receive a single cent, they will also have to pay us to make up for their losses." Yang Qindong didn't really want their money. With Crimson City as their base of operations, Gao Xiong and the others had already taken control of the entire region of the sea. Anyone who wanted to pass by would either have their goods stolen, or would have to pay an extremely heavy price before being allowed to pass. This caused a large amount of money to flow in from the sea. Yang Qindong didn't lack money. Not to mention, once the Immortal Abode opened for business, it would definitely make a lot of money. 2 taels of silver per person per month really wasn't much. Of course, this so-called not much also depended on who it was compared to. Ordinary citizens, especially children in their teens, would definitely have very few opportunities to earn that much money. In fact, they might not even have the chance to do so. Yang Qindong only had Xiaoyin do this because he understood the situation. Yang Qindong also believed that with Xiaoyin's personality, she would definitely do a good job. Moreover, anyone who could catch her eye shouldn't be too bad. After all, she had followed him for such a long time. She didn't have much else, but when it came to experience, few people could compare to her. After sending Xiaoyin out of the Yang clan manor, he arranged for Qiu Vi and Yang Wu to protect her. At the same time, Qiu Vi and a group of guards also left the manor. With his reputation as Yang Qindong, the chances of anything happening were extremely low. Zhi Qindong turned around and entered his study. His figure flickered as he reappeared in the large warehouse. As soon as he entered the warehouse, Yang Qindong headed for the club. There was a television and a video player there, as well as the complete Yizhong Tian analysis of the 3 kingdoms. He had come here to study. He wanted to make a Yang Qindong analysis of the 3 kingdoms. It took Yang Qindong 4 hours to come out of the study room. When the sun was about to set, Yang Qindong walked out. He saw Tiger's Mane waiting for him. The young master's study couldn't be entered unless there was something important. Moreover, when entering, one had to first pull on the doorbell, a so-called drawstring device. Once one pulled on the doorbell, one would be able to hear the sound from the inside. Only after obtaining permission could one enter. This was Yang Qindong's requirement for everyone around him. Even Qiaoyin and Tiger's Mane weren't allowed to break this rule. This was also a habit that Yang Qindong had instilled in everyone. This way, when he needed to enter the large warehouse, he didn't have to worry about someone suddenly appearing outside to disturb him. When he saw Tiger's Mane waiting for him outside with a calm expression, he knew that there was nothing urgent. As Yang Qindong walked over, he asked Tiger's Mane, "Has everything been taken care of?" "It's been taken care of. All the fifth-rank officials in the capital, including the Duke's estates, Marquis estates, Count's estates, and even the Imperial Palace, have been sent over according to the number that was previously agreed upon," Tiger's Mane respectfully replied. "Very good. Is there anyone who doesn't accept them?" "There isn't." Tiger's Mane pondered for a moment. Indeed, there wasn't any news of anyone confiscating toilet paper. Thus, he nodded affirmatively and said, "They've all accepted them." Not bad. This answer was somewhat out of Yang Qindong's expectations. He originally thought that there would be independent people like Yu Qian who wouldn't accept gifts. He didn't expect them to accept all of them. It seemed like they thought that toilet paper wasn't worth much, which was why they accepted it so easily. Since that was the case, he would give them a heavy blow later on. He wanted them to understand that toilet paper wasn't a piece of white paper. It was an existence that was much more valuable than that. "Do we have enough toilet paper in the warehouse?" "It's sufficient. It's definitely enough to deal with the capital. Also, Crimson City is speeding up. The first batch of goods is already on its way to the capital. Wang Zhen has also sent someone over to deliver the Eastern Faction Depot's pass token. It can guarantee that the goods will be able to pass through without any obstructions." Tiger's Mane explained the matter of the Eastern Faction Depot's pass token. Hee. Upon hearing this, Yang Qindong chuckled and said, "That Wang Zhen is a smart person. He knows that it's hard to get anything back without any effort. This is good. It'll save us a lot of trouble." "Yes. With the Eastern Faction Depot's pass, our goods will be safer along the way. It will also save us a lot of trouble. We can also save a lot of filial piety along the way," Tiger's Mane said excitedly. "No." Yang Qindong stretched out his index finger and said, "We still have to pay the necessary filial piety along the way. You must know that in many cases a county official isn't as good as a local official. There's no need to make enemies and trouble just to save some money." Seeing how certain Yang Qindong was, Tiger's Mane's expression turned cold and he said, "Yes, Tiger's Mane will remember it. I'll instruct them later. By the way, young Master 4 sent an invitation. He said that there will be a new song at 100 Flowers Hall tonight. He invited young Master 4 to go with him." "No need. I still have to make all kinds of drinks with the cook, each hour tonight. I won't be going to 100 Flowers Hall. But you have to send someone to keep an eye on the situation there and report back to this young Master 4. Yang Qindong shook his head. Although he also wanted to see Madame Snow's elegance, there were too many things that he needed to do. He had to do everything himself. When things were on the right track, he could relax a little. "Yes." Tiger's Mane replied and went to arrange things. Yang Qindong strode toward the kitchen in the backyard. Qiaoyin hadn't returned yet, so he seized the time to go to the kitchen. Otherwise, when she came back, it was inevitable that she would warn him to stay away from the kitchen. The red light district of the capital. At this moment, 100 Flowers Hall was packed with people. Even though there was still an hour before the start of the competition, the place was already filled with people. For example, Su Qingzong, Zhang De, Wang Si, and the others who had appeared at the Nine Arts Workshop yesterday were also here. Furthermore, they were seated closer to the stage. They were all regulars of Nine Arts Workshop and had a rather special status there. But after listening to Yang Qindong's 3 new songs yesterday, their attitudes had changed. They had naturally lost interest in the songs that they had heard countless times before. Hearing that there was a new song in the 100 Flowers Hall, and that it was sent back by Madame Shui after she went to the Yangjia village during the day, how could she hold back? She immediately ordered the servants at home to book a table here. They weren't the only ones. The news of Nine Arts Workshop's new song had already spread throughout the capital. It was said that this matter had even been called to the morning court. Even the emperor knew of this matter. Once this matter was hyped up, everyone naturally knew about it. Countless people naturally came because of the fame, and for a moment 100 Flowers Hall was packed to the brim. Chapter 76. Not only that, some round tables which could only seat 4 or 5 people, were now filled with 7 or 8 people. Although it was a little crowded, it proved that there was a lively scene here. Mu Lily, the procuress, was a famous courtesan in the capital when she was young. Now she was in charge of the business of Baihua Hall. Although she was less than 30 years old, she was still very charming. When she saw the scene today, she couldn't stop smiling. Well, let's get busy. Don't neglect the guests. This is a good opportunity for our Baihua Hall to become famous. Mu Lily's eyes were almost narrowed into slits. She walked in the hall and greeted the guests warmly. She was afraid that she would be impolite and cause trouble because there were too many people. However, Mu Lily obviously thought too much. Today everyone was here for the new song. At least, before they heard the new song, no one would casually cause trouble. This also made it so that although the number of people in the hall was several times more than usual, the order was not disrupted. After the performance, Madame Shui was still practicing. After all, she had only sung during the day. It was indeed a little hasty for her to perform at night. Moreover, there were so many guests today. What if she screwed up? What would she do? Wouldn't those nobles tear down 100 Flowers Hall? She had been on the stage many times, but she didn't know why she was so nervous today. She remembered that when she went on the stage for the first time, she was as nervous as she was now. Miss, you don't have to be so nervous. Although I have just learned this song, other than Dong Shui, no one else knows what the original song is like. On the other hand, Xiao Wei was thinking of ways to comfort her young miss. Xiao Wei's words made sense, but Madame Shui still shook her head stubbornly. No, I have to live up to Dong Shui's trust. By the way, Xiao Wei, is Dong Shui here tonight? Xiao Wei wanted to lie to her miss, who was full of expectation. However, she knew that she could not lie to her miss when she went on the stage. She shook her head reluctantly. Dong Shui didn't come. He didn't come? Obviously, Madame Shui was somewhat disappointed. Judging from the way Dong Shui looked at her during the day, he should still like her. At the very least, he admired her. If that was the case, why couldn't he come to 100 Flowers Hall today when he could go to 9 Arts Workshop yesterday? Seeing that her young miss was in low spirits, Xiao Wei was afraid that something bad would happen. She quickly added, I've sent someone to check. Dong Shui didn't go to Jianghu Arts Workshop today. Perhaps this was the only good news. At least it proved that Yang Qindong was not biased. I see. Sure enough, Madame Snow's expression became much better after hearing that. As a woman in the entertainment field, perhaps her competitive nature was stronger. When she heard that Dong Shui didn't go anywhere, her mood became much better. The guests at the front desk did not know what was going on backstage, nor did they know that the heart of their goddess, who had always wanted to get close to her, had already flown out of the venue and was no longer with the guests. Time passed little by little, and it was getting closer and closer to the start of the show. The geisha who was warming up the scene had already gone up the stage. However, both the performers and the audience were obviously absent-minded. They were all waiting for the 2 new songs to come on the stage. Finally, Madame Snow, who was dressed in white, went up the stage accompanied by her maid, Xiao Wei, accompanied by a burst of enthusiastic applause. Of course, no one knew whether it was a farewell applause. Lady Shui's clothes were as white as snow, and her skin was white and tender. Her skin was as clean as a baby's. Coupled with her graceful figure, she received a wave of applause as soon as she stepped onto the stage. The applause went on for a long time until Madame Snow sat down on the guzheng. At that moment, the whole venue became very quiet. In the silence, under the eager eyes of the audience, the sound of the guzheng rang softly, accompanied by Madame Snow's pleasant monologue. A long time ago there was a firearms camp. Song Laosan and his family lived next to it. They had nothing to do. The monologue was to let more people know the story so that they could understand the main idea of the song. It was also specially requested by Yang Qindong. At least, the monologue was still needed before the song became a hit. When people became familiar with the song, the monologue could be skipped at any time. The monologue made people's expressions change again and again. From the monologue, they seemed to have seen the tragic ending of the young couple who loved each other. In the corner of the hall, a handsome scholar with a white face was listening to the monologue with tears in his eyes. Beside her, there was a handsome attendant accompanying her. However, she seemed to have forgotten her role, which was to look after the young master. At this moment, her eyes were also filled with tears. She was like a dam that was about to burst, and the rain could pour down at any time. Little Qing, how do you think he came up with such a tragic story? Is Little Six really referring to himself? Did he really have such an unforgettable love when he was young? The seated young master gently wiped away the tears that were about to flow out and asked the attendant standing beside him. Little master, I don't know. The attendant shook her head and said in a choked voice. In the hall, many people were moved and affected by the story, but none of them shed tears like the 2 girls. The situation here was naturally noticed by the diners at the surrounding tables. Some people naturally looked over. Lower your head. Noticing that some people were looking at her table, the young master quickly lowered her head, and so did the attendant who accompanied her. The two girls reacted quickly. In addition, the place was a little remote and the light was dim, so the others could not see what was going on. Then they all turned back to the stage. Sensing that other people were not looking at them, the master and the attendant looked up and made faces at each other. It was also at this moment that their mischievous nature was revealed. If Lord Hu Zhangning was here, he would definitely be shocked to discover that these two so-called young masters and errand boys were actually his precious daughter, Hu Yin, and her personal maid, Xiao Qin. They came here naturally because they heard that Baihua Hall was going to sing a new song at night. They also knew that Madame Shui had just returned from Yangzhe village during the day, which made them even more curious. After some discussion, they decided to come here in person to see what Madame Shui looked like. Let's see if this new song is really as good as the rumors outside say, that it can really make people unforgettable, and has the effect of making people feel relaxed and happy. The tip of the peach leaf is sharp and the willow leaf is holding up the sky. Lord Ming in his position, listen to me carefully. After the narration, the song officially began. With Madame Shui's beautiful voice, a refreshing song entered people's ears, which made people feel comfortable and comfortable. Unlike Yang Qindong's voice, Madame Shui's voice seemed to be sadder. Even Su Qingzong, Zhang De, Wang Si, and Yang Yang had the same feeling. There was a beginning and an end. When the song came to an end, there was silence in the field at first. Then there was an earth-shattering applause. It seemed to form a heat wave, which was about to melt Madame Shui on the platform. Thank you. Seeing the effect, Madame Shui stood up and said, "Greetings to everyone." Then she slowly sat down and put her slender fingers on the zither. The tune of "Wishing People Forever" began to reverberate in the Hall of Blossoms. People were first attracted by the clean tone of the song. Before long, Madame Shui's beautiful voice rang out. "When will the moon be bright?" With a cup of wine in my hand, I asked the sky. "I wonder what year it is in the heavenly palace." Geo Arts Workshop. It was not as lively as yesterday. In fact, it was even quieter than before. Although Madame Shui's name had been hung outside the Geo Arts Workshop today, and it did attract some young master and child masters, their status could not be compared with that of the guests in Baihua Hall. On the stage, Madame Shui just sang 2 old songs and then left with a sad face. As soon as she went backstage, Chuaner the procuress came up to her and said, "Sister Hanxiang, it's all my fault. I shouldn't have stopped you from going to Dong Shui yesterday." "No, Sister Chui, it's not your fault. I thought too much. I've decided to go to Yang village tomorrow. No matter what, I'll ask Dong Shui to teach me 2 songs. Madame Shui looked very determined and confident. She regretted it when she learned that Madame Shui had gone to Yang village during the day. Then the news came out that Madame Snow had learned 2 new songs and had gotten Dong Shui's permission to sing them in public for the first time in the 100 Flowers Hall that night. She regretted it even more. Yang Qindong was the first to come to Geo Arts Workshop, so she had the advantage. However, she did not seize the opportunity and gave all the benefits to others. How could Madame Shui, who still had the title of courtesan, accept this? Whether it was to fight back or for the future business of Geo Arts Workshop, she needed to see Dong Shui again. She wanted to humbly ask for advice and restore her prestige. The curfew was about to start. A large number of people in Baihua Hall began to leave and go their separate ways. In the crowd, 2 young masters, Hu Yen and Little Qing, who were dressed as young masters, were hurriedly walking in the direction of the Hu mansion. They had come out in disguise this time. If their grandfather, father, and mother found out, it would be a scandal. The dignified young mistress of the Hu family went to the red light district and went to Baihua Hall to listen to songs. Once such a shocking matter was spread out, the Hu family would definitely be criticized for not having a good upbringing. Even if Hu Yen could find a suitable marriage, it would be hard to say. Chapter 77. The 2 of them ran all the way before the curfew. When they arrived at the small alley in front of the back door of the Hu estate, Hu Yen supported herself against the wall and panted as she spoke to her maidservant Xiao Qin, who also looked as if she had fallen apart. "Let's rest for a while before entering the estate. Otherwise, if father sees us, we will be in big trouble." "What are you afraid of me seeing you?" A deep male voice rang out beside her. It wasn't loud, but it sounded like a clap of thunder in Hu Yan's ears. Ghost. As soon as she heard someone else's voice, The servant girl Xiaoqing screamed instinctively and then hid behind Miss Hu Yan. Xiaoqing, what are you doing? I can't tell. That's my father's voice. However, Hu Yan was still able to keep her composure. This was mainly because she had heard that voice for so many years and was already very familiar with it. Hu Yan grabbed the panicked Xiaoqing and lowered her head as if she had done something wrong. Father, I'm just bored at home, so I went out for a stroll. Stroll? Gaosheng, you tell me? His voice suddenly became more severe and two figures flashed out of the alley. It was Hu Jiangning and one of his subordinates, Gao Sheng, one of the two people who had been taught a lesson by Beta Persei in the Jian Estate's Yang family mansion. Yes, sir. In the afternoon, Xiaoqing found Lieutenant Sun Chuang, the other person who had been beaten by Beta Persei, and asked him to book a table at 100 Flowers Hall. Enough. Without waiting for Gao Sheng to continue, Hu Yan had already interrupted him. Since her father had even investigated this, there was no point in explaining anything. Father, I was just curious about what the two new songs were like, so you dared to go to 100 Flowers Hall? Do you know what kind of place that is? Do you know what will happen if your identity is exposed or if you meet a lecher? Do you know? Hu Jiangning was obviously very angry, and scolded Hu Yan for a long time in one breath. In the end, Hu Jiangning, who had been criticizing Hu Yan for a long time, made the final decision. Hu Yan did not abide by the rules. She will be grounded for a month. Maid Xiaoqing didn't do what a maid should do. She didn't take good care of her master. She was punished with half a year's salary and 2 beatings. Gao Sheng sent someone to carry out the punishment. Lieutenant Sun Chuang is reckless. His salary will be deducted for half a year, and he will also be punished with 10 planks. Hu Jiangning angrily turned around and left, leaving behind Hu Yan with an incredulous look on her face. Father, you can punish me however you want, but don't hit Xiaoqing. It's too painful to hit her with 2 strokes of the paddle. Ignoring his daughter, Hu Jiangning walked faster and faster, as if he would change his mind if he slowed down a little. Unable to call out to her father, Hu Yan had no choice but to look at Gao Sheng for help. Lieutenant Gao, can you write down little Qing's 2 paddles first? I will go and plead with my father, okay? No, we have to carry out milord's orders. Gao Sheng shook his head. This time Hu Jiangning was truly angry. Even Lieutenant Sun Chuang had to be punished with 10 planks. If he dared to disobey orders and not hit Xiaoqing, then he would be the one to be hit. Yang Qindong didn't know that Hu Yan had disguised herself as a man and gone to the 100 Flowers Hall to listen to a new song, only to be caught red-handed by Lord Hu Jiangning and put under house arrest. He was currently in the kitchen with Yi Qiuer, experimenting with various drinks in preparation for the opening of the immortal abode. What he didn't know was that on this very night, Gao Xiong's naval and land forces launched a joint operation to seize Flag Mountain. In the early years of the Ming dynasty, the old prince of Zhongshan, Shang Baji, conquered Shannon. Together with Shanbei and Zhongshan, they formed the unified Ryukyu kingdom, the first Shang dynasty. This was also the golden age of the Ryukyu kingdom. Its commerce was highly developed, and it traded with the Ming dynasty, Korea, Southeast Asia, and Japan. However, all of this had just begun when it was forced to stop because of Yang Qindong. Gao Xiong led a powerful navy to harass and surround the Ryukyu Islands. This caused the Ryukyu kingdom to suffer great losses. Its maritime trade was hindered, and it became a closed country. Chichen City was occupied and the sea routes were sealed. This caused the 6th-generation king to die of anger, and the successor was the 7th-generation king, Shangde, who was still underage. Shangde was only 12 years old. Because of his father's early death, he took over the throne. However, even though he was the king of a territory, he still couldn't change the current situation of the Ryukyu Islands. He had sent out ships to break out of the encirclement and inform the outside world of the situation. However, without exception, all of the ships he sent were sunk as soon as they left the harbor. It had to be said that the Ryukyu kingdom was also plagued with misfortune. It had only been less than 20 years since the first prince of Zhongshan, Baji, had taken over and several kings had died. They had either died of illness or met with mishaps while out at sea. Now, all of the burden had fallen on the young Shangde's shoulders. How could he not be worried? After trying all sorts of methods, he finally decided to stay put and wait for reinforcements. Perhaps after a while, someone would discover that something was wrong with the Ryukyu Islands, and they would send people to investigate. Shangde still held onto a sliver of hope, but Gao Xiong couldn't wait any longer. Before Yang Qindong left Chichen City, he had told him that once the population was sufficient, he had to think about expansion. The first thing he had to do was to take over the entire Ryukyu kingdom and occupy the entire island. Now, every few days there would be ships going back and forth between the Black Dock and Chichen City. The people on those ships were all Han people of the Great Ming Dynasty. They had all been secretly obtained by Lung Song during Deng Maoqi's uprising. Lung Song completely obeyed Yang Qindong's orders. He plundered everyone he saw and robbed everything he saw. Chichen City, which originally had a low population base, began to rapidly expand. Although he didn't see any danger yet, Gao Xiong still remembered what the sixth young master had said: if a man doesn't think far ahead, he will definitely have immediate worries. For this reason he decided to attack Qishan, which was the closest to Chichen City in the southwest. Based on the principle of obtaining the greatest victory with the least casualties, Gao Xiong made a detailed pre-battle plan before he made his move. He gathered the 1st Company Commander 1st Lieutenant Xiao Feng and 3rd Company 1st Lieutenant Chang Tingshan at home and came up with a plan to attack Qishan from both inside and outside. At the beginning of the 9th month of the 13th year of the Great Ming Dynasty, when Yang Qindong had just arrived in the capital and was still stirring up trouble, Gao Xiong started his operation. That night the wind was strong. Especially for an island like Ryukyu, the wind was even stronger at night. The flag on the city wall of Qishan swayed vigorously and the flagpole seemed as though it would break at any moment. On such a night, it was rare for anyone to come out. It was the same even on the city wall. The few soldiers of the Shang dynasty who were in charge of night duty had already hidden in a small hut to rest. In the small hut, 20 soldiers were all squeezed together. This made Captain Li Luan unhappy. If everyone is here to rest, who will be guarding the city wall? What if those pirates attack us? Captain, don't worry too much. With such a strong sea breeze, wouldn't they be blown away by the wind if they wanted to climb up the city wall, which is more than 30 feet tall? Besides, I don't think there's anything wrong with those pirates. Occasionally when the weather is good, us brothers can see them. Those people on the other side are wearing good clothes and all of them have oily faces. They must be eating well, unlike us who are often in arrears with the military pay. The lives of the commoners will only be harder. One of the soldiers didn't seem to be afraid of Li Luan. After he complained, the other soldiers also started to talk. Although Li Luan was a little angry, he knew that his prestige wasn't enough to make these people shut up. Speaking of which, he was also angry. His wife and children didn't even have enough to eat, which made him, the captain, extremely dispirited. While everyone was sighing and complaining about how they were born in the wrong time, they didn't know that in such a strong sea breeze, Lung Feng had already used the triangular anchor and other equipment to climb up the city wall, which was more than 30 feet tall. Such a city wall might seem very tall to others, but to the members of Lung Feng who often had to climb it, it was just child's play. In less than half an incense's time, a row of 30 vanguard members had all arrived at the top of the city wall. The wind is so strong. Use your guns. Company Commander Xiao Feng, who followed the first batch of members up the city wall, decisively ordered the soldiers to put away their crossbows and switch to their Type 95 submachine guns when he heard the whistling wind. The 30 people's movements were uniform. In just a few seconds they held their guns in their hands and performed a pre-battle inspection. When the first person raised his right thumb to indicate that the inspection was complete, the other 29 people did the same thing. Everything was done silently and swiftly. It was obvious that this wasn't the first time such a drill was conducted. Xiao Feng observed the performance of the Lung Feng soldiers. He nodded slightly and made a gesture to disperse and surround them. The 30 soldiers immediately moved forward in a fan formation. During this period of time, no one made a single sound. In the dark night, they were like ghosts that appeared and disappeared unpredictably, approaching the small hut on the city tower that could be used as a residence. In the small house the soldiers were still complaining. As the captain, Li Luan had long shut his mouth and narrowed his eyes. If he had the time to argue, he might as well take a rest. This way he could eat less tomorrow morning and bring more food back for his children. Sigh, I really don't know when these days will end. Thinking about the current situation, Li Luan, who was sighing in his heart, suddenly heard a sound from the door. Then he stood up with a jolt. He knew that the 20 soldiers in his squad were all in the small house. The only ones who could appear here at this time were either his superior had come to check on them or the enemy had ambushed them. Chapter 78. Li Luan's reaction wasn't slow, but the person's reaction was faster. Before Li Luan could pull out his sword, a black muzzle was already pointed at him. Not only that, there were several black muzzles that were pointed at his subordinates. Don't move, those who surrender will be spared. Those who resist will be killed. A loud voice sounded. It was the voice of the company commander, Xiao Feng. As soon as he finished speaking, bah! A gunshot rang out. One of the Shang dynasty soldiers clutched his chest and fell to the ground with a look of unwillingness and shock. In his hand, he had already pulled out a long sword and was about to slash forward. One of the Lung Feng soldiers felt the danger and killing intent. Without hesitation he opened fire and ended the life of the enemy who wanted to resist. The sound of the gunshot was loud and clear in the room, but in the night wind the sound could not travel far. With one person dead, the room became much quieter. Then the captain Li Luan felt that his life was being threatened. He didn't want any of his brothers to die here, so he shouted anxiously, "Listen to me, don't move. Take out your weapons and throw them on the ground. I think that since these people said that they would be spared if they surrendered, they should be true to their words." "That's right, we will keep our promise. The prerequisite is that you guys have to listen to us too. If you guys have any ulterior motives, you will end up like that person." Xiao Feng looked at Li Luan's performance and nodded his head in satisfaction. However, in order to not cause any more problems, he couldn't help but threaten him. When the black muzzle was aimed at him again, Li Luan felt his body tense up. He clearly saw the scene just now. This black metal thing could easily take a person's life. Not wanting to die, he hurriedly threw his sword and scabbard on the ground. At the same time he covered his head with both hands and squatted down. With Li Luan taking the lead, the other 18 brothers followed suit and threw down their weapons, crouching on the ground with their hands on their heads. "Very good," Xiao Feng praised, then gestured to Lung Feng who was at the side. A few of them took out ropes from their backpacks and tied up all 19 of them, including Li Luan. Just as he was done, the door opened again. A soldier in camouflage uniform walked in. He stood straight and saluted. "Sir, the city gate has been opened by our brothers hiding in the city. 2nd Platoon, 3rd Company, and 1,000 auxiliary soldiers have entered the city. Company Commander Tingshan, may I ask if we can besiege the barracks in the city?" "Yes, everything is going according to plan. Also, tell the brothers that the auxiliary troops are not to participate in the battle. Go and maintain order in the city. As long as the civilians do not cause trouble and stay in their homes, they are not to be harmed." "Most of the people in the city are Han." Xiao Feng replied with a military salute. "Yes." The soldier who responded with a military salute turned around to pass down the order. Xiao Feng also prepared to bring people to carry out the battle plan. At this moment, Li Luan, who was squatting on the ground, spoke. "Sir, are you the pirates on the other side?" "What? Do you have any questions?" Xiao Feng turned around and asked, a sharp look flashing in his eyes. Naturally, he did not like the word pirate. It was only because the 6th young master said that it was not good to expose their strength. Thus, they had no choice but to call themselves pirates. Feeling that Xiao Feng's gaze could kill, Li Luan instinctively lowered his head and avoided it. Then he said in a small voice, "If you can really not harm the civilians in the city, I am willing to be your guide. There are many of my brothers in the barracks. I think I can help persuade them." Li Luan volunteered himself for 2 reasons. Firstly, he had long lost confidence in the #1 Shang dynasty. Even the soldiers did not have enough to eat, let alone the common people. Secondly, the weakness of the Shang dynasty made them feel extremely aggrieved. After being surrounded and forbidden from entering the sea, and not being able to send out any ships, they had actually holed themselves up like turtles and refused to move. It was as if they couldn't think of any solution. Instead, they had placed all their hopes on the outside, praying that others would discover their tragic situation and that someone would come to their rescue. This was completely a lucky move. It was no different from spending 2 yuan and waiting for 5 million. The possibility of them being rescued was close to 0. Thirdly, he had just witnessed Lung Feng's prowess. With one shot, one of his subordinates was killed. This should be the gun that Ming was talking about. However, from the looks of it, it seemed to be even more powerful than the gun in the legends. Faced with such a powerful weapon, what could the Shang dynasty use to fight them? Fourthly, although he did not have much contact with them, he had heard some things about these pirates since he was guarding Qishan, which was the closest place to Chichen City. They were completely different from other pirates. They did not bully civilians. When they robbed, they only robbed boats and people. However, they did not kill civilians or merchants. With all these knowledge and after seeing Lung Feng's mental state, Li Luan had the idea of helping them. Not only could he redeem himself, he might even be able to save more of his brothers in the barracks. Li Luan's volunteering naturally made Xiao Feng overjoyed. "Alright, if you do this well, not only can you save more people from the flames of war, you can also save more lives. You can also be considered to have performed a meritorious deed. How about this? Untie him and bring him along with us. Li Luan regained his freedom. However, there were two Lung Feng beside him so that they could restrain him immediately if he made any strange movements. With Li Luan leading the way, the cold vanguard moved even faster. With the cover provided by the strong wind at night, when the first company and the third company, a total of 200 cold vanguards, arrived at the entrance of Qishan military camp, the soldiers there were still not alerted at all. Rocket launcher team, get ready. Everyone load your guns. If there's any resistance, kill. As soon as they arrived in front of the barracks, Xiao Feng and third company's Chang Tingshan looked at each other and gave out the order for the battle. In an instant, the 200 people completed their actions silently. Even in the dark, all the Lung Feng's actions of checking their guns were still swift and perfect. All of this made Li Luan's jaw drop. He had been in the army since he was a teenager. He had seen many armies, including some elite ones, but this was the first time he had seen one as outstanding as the one before him. Were these people the celestial soldiers and celestial generals that were mentioned in the books? Why were their actions so uniform? Why didn't the 200 people make any extra noise? At this moment, Li Luan had a feeling that Qishan would definitely be taken down if they were to fight head-on. At the same time, he did not know why he felt his blood boiling. At this moment, he suddenly had the urge to join this army. Ready. The squad leaders reported softly. As the commander of this battle, Xiao Feng said to Li Luan beside him after seeing that the Lung Feng were ready, "It's up to you now. I can guarantee you that as long as you lay down your weapons and surrender, you can live. On the other hand, no matter what the reason is, if you dare to pick up your weapons and resist, you must die." Understood. Li Luan could tell that this army's combat power was extraordinary. He did not dare to bargain and immediately agreed. Then an iron loudspeaker appeared in front of him. It was a round loudspeaker. Even without electricity, the loudspeaker could spread the sound better. Holding the loudspeaker, Li Luan's loud voice suddenly rang in the night. "Brothers in the camp, I'm Li Luan, the squad leader of the guards on the wall. You've been surrounded. Lay down your weapons and surrender and you can live. We're all Hans. 500 years ago we were one family. Don't be a futile resistance." His shout was like a clap of thunder in the silent night. It exploded in the entire camp and caused an uproar. For a moment there were all kinds of curses in the camp. Most of them were cursing to find their uniforms and weapons. The cursing continued for about half a quarter of an hour before it slowly subsided. Then in the dark, 100-man squad crept toward the wooden fence. It seemed like they wanted to use their advantage of being more familiar with the terrain to launch a counterattack. Ready the rocket launcher. Target the wooden fence. Fire. Xiao Feng had already seen the enemy's every move with his night vision goggles. Night battles were a part of Lung Feng's training. Because of proper nutrition, the ordinary soldiers did not suffer from night blindness. At this moment, they could clearly see the enemy's actions in the opposite camp. The commander gave the order, and immediately 2 rocket launchers with powerful flames shot forward. After 1.5 seconds, they slammed into the wooden fence that could block the impact of manpower and horsepower. Immediately, flames soared into the sky, and the sound was like thunder. The rocket launcher was a type of infantry anti-tank and siege weapon. It was light and had a short range. At the same time, it could be fired in a straight line, upward or downward direction. It had a variety of attack methods that were perfect for close-range sieges. The 2 rocket launchers were fired and instantly destroyed the main gate of the camp. The powerful flames and explosive force scared the 100-man vanguard soldiers who wanted to sneak out of the camp. What is this? Is this the wrath of the heavens? This must be the punishment of the heavens. After seeing such powerful firepower, the 100-man vanguard's morale immediately collapsed. In the face of the unknown, humans naturally had a kind of fear, not to mention that it had such great power. Li Luan looked at everything in front of him in a daze. When he saw such powerful firearms, he knew that the soldiers of Qishan's camp had been defeated. He only hesitated for a few seconds before he shouted again, "Brothers, I'm Li Luan. You should have seen the power of these firearms. If you don't want to die, throw down your weapons and surrender. Your families are still waiting for us to return safely in the city." Chapter 79. Under Li Luan's persuasion and the powerful impact of the rocket launcher, some of the smarter soldiers finally realized that they weren't strong enough. The first person threw his weapon to the ground. Then, like a contagious disease, there was a second person, a third person. The frightened soldiers of Qishan threw down the weapons in their hands one by one and then walked out of the military camp in groups. They covered their heads and walked out of the military camp. The entire battle had ended so simply without firing a single shot or firing a single cannon. Of course, this was because of the deterrence of the powerful weapons. However, more importantly, it was because the soldiers of Qishan already had a grudge against the Shang dynasty. They didn't have enough to eat and couldn't wear clothes. Such an army had long lost their morale. How could they be counted on to win the battle? From Li Luan's words, the Qishan military camp had more than 2,000 soldiers. Xiao Feng ordered the auxiliary soldiers who had already entered the city to maintain law and order to take in the captives. At the same time, Qishan city was sealed. Only people were allowed to enter and not leave. The entire city was checked overnight. If there were any dangerous people, they would be killed. However, at the same time, the soldiers were not allowed to harass the commoners. If they were caught, they would be dealt with according to military law. After occupying the city, there had been countless military exercises to maintain peace. Putting them in Qishan city was just turning the exercises into actual battles. However, the soldiers of Lung Feng who had made all kinds of preparations were still very familiar with it. In just a few hours, Qishan city's law and order were restored. There were even some courageous commoners who dared to appear in the morning market to continue trading. When the sun rose, a new 5-starred red flag was placed on the city walls of Qishan city. This meant that from this moment onwards, this place was under Yang Qindong's control. Get someone to inform Captain Gao Xiong of this news. Then pass it on to the 6th young master. At the same time, all platoon leaders and squad leaders will have a meeting to review the battle and point out their own shortcomings. Xiao Feng followed Yang Qindong's training and carried out his work with the mindset that there must be a conclusion after the battle. In conclusion, it was a method that could allow people to grow and become stronger quickly. Reality also proved that a big summary after a big battle and a small summary after a small battle could expose more potential problems and point out the correct direction to fight the next battle. In the palace hall, the officials had already arrived at the morning court. Because the emperor had not arrived yet, the officials gathered in 2s and 3s to chat. Lord Li, did you receive Yang Shima's gift yesterday? A voice that was not too abrupt came from the crowd. In fact, he was already used to such conversations before every morning court session. Lord Zhang, what kind of gift is that? Isn't it just toilet paper? Lord Li shook his head lightly as if Lord Zhang was making a fuss over nothing. Hey, there are many ways to use that. If I'm not wrong, you definitely haven't used that thing. Lord Zhang said with a mysterious expression. Am I useless? Did you use it? Lord Li's curiosity was piqued by Lord Zhang's words. Of course, it's all thanks to my wife. When it was delivered, her stomach was not feeling well, so she took it and used it. When she came back, she told you about the wonderful effects of this thing. It was really comfortable and very soft. I didn't believe it, so I used it once. Haha, I decided that after that, I'll always use this toilet paper. Not only that, when I'm done with court, I'll send someone to the Yang clan manor to find a Yang Xian horse and get some more. Lord Zhang said as if he had benefited from this experience. It wasn't just Lord Zhang in court. Lord Wang, Lord Sun, Lord Zhou, Lord Wu, and the other officials had all used this benefit and knew of its benefits. The officials who didn't think much of it before were all intrigued by the words of these people. They all decided to go back to their mansions to see what the toilet paper was. They wanted to see if it was better than the wood and bamboo pieces that they usually used. Because of Yang Qindong, the toilet bowl had been introduced first, and the majority of officials in the capital had already started using it. Now, toilet paper had become a complementary product. Although it seemed unremarkable, it was truly the beginning of a new civilization. Not to mention what was said in the morning court. After the court was dismissed, most of the important officials hurried back to their residences. Not long after, the stewards of the various residences boarded their carriages and left the city, heading straight for the Yang clan manor 15 li south of the city. This was because the Yang clan manor had a large number of potatoes, and it was the only one in the Great Ming dynasty. For its safety, the Eastern faction guards and embroidered uniform guards took turns to guard the manor to prevent anyone from causing trouble. When the stewards of the various residences arrived, they were all blocked outside. Left with no choice, they could only pass the visiting cards from their family to Steward Yang Neng and explain their intentions. Regarding this, the new steward Yang Neng had already received instructions from the 6th young master. He cupped his fists and said to the stewards who came forward to ask for toilet paper, "I'm sorry, everyone. My sixth young master said that the toilet paper was shipped from the sea, and the production is limited. Previously, I took out the toilet paper because I thought that it would be better to share it with everyone, but now, I really don't have much left. If everyone really wants it, then wait until the Heavens Beyond trading firm opens for business and buy it there. Yang Ning had a smile on his face. As the saying goes, a slap doesn't hit a smiling face. Since he had already said so, what else could the stewards do? They could only hurriedly return to their residences. Since they didn't have any new goods for a while, they would have to use the toilet paper that was delivered yesterday sparingly. Other than the first young master and first madam, everyone else could forget about using it. Of course, there were also some officials who thought that Yang Qindong was too stingy. It was just some unremarkable toilet paper, and he wanted to set up a trading firm that they had never heard of to sell it. How much money could that thing be worth? Could he earn back the capital by opening a shop for it? These people's thoughts weren't wrong. After all, toilet paper wasn't something that could be put on the table. Moreover, it wasn't like they couldn't do without it. In the past, when there was no such thing, shouldn't everyone still do what they should do? For something like this, if it was sold at a high price, there probably wouldn't be many people who would buy it. However, if it was sold at a low price, they probably wouldn't even be able to earn back the rent for the shop. That was the normal way of thinking, but how could the people of this era guess what was going on in Yang Qindong's mind? If you said that toilet paper wasn't worth much, there was nothing wrong with that. However, Yang Qindong firmly believed that once people were used to it, they wouldn't be able to adapt to it if you asked them to use wood or bamboo. More importantly, he intended to use hunger marketing to sell it, which meant that he would sell it at a fixed amount a day. Based on the idea that the rarer something was, the more valuable it would be. Once the supply exceeded the demand, the price would naturally rise. When that time came, if other adults used toilet paper, would you still have the nerve to use bamboo? Even if the price was slightly higher, there would still be many people who would rush to buy it. The capital was not like any other place. There were many rich people here and even more people with authority. Even if the price of toilet paper was a little more expensive, it was still completely acceptable. This would become one of Yang Qindong's tools for making money. Although he couldn't make a huge profit, he would win in the long run. Who residence? Little Qing was lying on a wooden bed with a painful expression. The 2 hits on her buttocks made her feel as if she was about to die. Little Qing, how do you feel? Does it hurt? With a face full of tears, Hu Yan at this moment made people truly understand what it meant to say that women were made of water. Ever since they returned to the courtyard last night and little Qing was beaten twice, she had been crying non-stop. Even after a night had passed, her tears still flowed out uncontrollably. She really didn't know where her tears came from. Miss, don't cry. Your eyes are swollen. It's so ugly. Resisting the pain on her but little Qing, who felt sorry for Hu Yan, squeezed out a smile and said, the miss was the master and the maid was the servant. In this hierarchical feudal society, little Qing still dared to make fun of her miss like this. It could be seen that the relationship between the two was really good to a certain extent. I don't care. I don't care if it's ugly. I just want to cry. I want to cry for my father to see how hard he hit me. Hu Yan shook her head vigorously, looking very wronged. But miss, the Lord has already hit me. It's useless even if you cry. It's better to find some medicine for little Qing to apply to the wound. Little Qing shook her head helplessly. Her miss was really cute at this time, but her butt was really painful. Do I need to apply medicine? Little Qing, is it very painful? Don't worry, I'll go out and find medicine. Hu Yan also got up at this moment, then wiped the tears on the corner of her eyes with her sleeve, and then strode out of the room. Outside the Mrs. Courtyard, Hu Jiangning gave Hu Yan a confinement order, and Lieutenant Gao Sheng was guarding here. When she came out, she just saw Gao Sheng dressed in a brocade guard uniform, and Hu Yan was angry. She thought that it was this person who complained and caused her little Qing and Lieutenant Sun Chuang to suffer. Mississippi, as soon as he saw Hu Yan come out, Gao Sheng straightened his chest and greeted her. Although he knew that what he did was arranged by the Lord, it was a fact that he had offended the miss. As soon as Hu Yan walked to the front of the courtyard, she deliberately pretended to be very angry and looked at Gao Sheng. But perhaps this gaze was too weak. Gao Sheng's expression did not change, and he still looked neither servile nor overbearing. Do you have injury medicine? Hu Yan, who wanted to be angry and ignore Gao Sheng, soon couldn't bear it. Thinking of little Qing who was in pain in the room, she had to lower her head. Yes. Hearing that she was not going to question him, but wanted injury medicine, Gao Xing immediately took out a porcelain bottle from his arms and handed it over. Use the amount of medicine to cover the wound 3 times a day. Chapter 80. Reaching out to take the porcelain bottle, Hu Yan angrily turned around and left without even saying a word of thanks. Gao Xing seemed to be used to being treated like this. He just smiled and stood there again. At this time, a cough suddenly sounded behind him. He turned around vigilantly. After seeing the person, he hurriedly bowed respectfully and said, "Sir. Why did Miss look for you just now?" The person who came was Hu Zhangning. At this time he had a constipated expression. After the morning court, he was called by his mother, Hu Yushi, to find a way to get some toilet paper. At this moment Hu Zhangning was stumped. It turned out that after the Yang family sent the toilet paper yesterday, Hu Wangshi, who was in charge of the backyard, was going to put it in the family's warehouse. However, Hu Yan, who was rushing over, took it away. Then she used it and the effect was really good. She gave the rest of the things to her mother and grandmother, Hu Yushi. With the recommendation of her granddaughter, Hu Yushi had people verify the magical effect of this thing. Then she sent the rest of the toilet paper to her relatives in the city. This was also the old lady's style of doing things. Perhaps because of her humble background, Hu Yushi had always valued her relatives very much. Once there was something good, she would immediately send it over. The toilet paper was the same. Except for a small packet, the rest were sent away. Hu Yan came back from the morning court and asked the old lady about the toilet paper. The old lady, who had no stock, had to give the task to her son. She also said that she wanted to get some more. There were still some relatives who had not shared it. In Hu Yushi's eyes, her son was the guardian of the genie guards. There was nothing that could be difficult for him. After Hu Zhangning received the task, he was not in a hurry. He sent the housekeeper of the house to the Yang family village 15 miles south of the city to ask for it. Unexpectedly, he returned empty-handed. According to the housekeeper, not only the Hu family but many ministers in the court also sent their housekeepers, but they did not bring back a packet of toilet paper. Hu Zhangning, who had already promised his mother, was a little anxious. Thinking that the toilet paper was given to the old lady by his daughter, she should have some stock in her hands. He had to bite the bullet and come to the door. If it was in the past, Hu Zhangning guaranteed that his daughter would agree to such a thing. The relationship between father and daughter had always been very good. But this time he had no confidence in his heart. He had just punished the other party yesterday, so he wasn't very confident in speaking up now. Even though he wasn't sure, Hu Zhangning, who had always been extremely filial, still decided to give it a try. He couldn't let his mother down. While Hu Zhangning was still thinking about what to say, Gao Xing, who was standing in front of him, had already answered, "Sir, Miss asked me for injury medicine." Injury medicine? Was little Qing seriously injured? It's just 2 military rods, Hu Zhangning said nonchalantly. When Gao Xing heard this, he couldn't help but think in his heart. 2 strikes from the military rod might not be much to a soldier, but for Xiao Qing, who had tender skin and was greatly cared for by the young miss, that was already a very heavy punishment. He thought this in his heart, but he could not say it out loud. He could only say with a serious expression, "This is the first time that maid Xiao Qing has been beaten by the military." In addition, these 2 beatings were not exaggerated at all. It is inevitable that she will be injured. What? Was there no water at all? I say, you are also right. She is a maid, not a thick-skinned soldier like you. How can she be treated equally? Hu Zhangning pretended to be very angry and reprimanded Gao Xing. Then he said casually, "Okay, I will go in and take a look." He strode into the young miss courtyard. Looking at Hu Zhangning's departing figure, Gao Xing was stunned in place. How could he not be treated equally? If these 2 beatings were exaggerated and didn't hurt or itch, he was afraid that when he returned, he would be accused of favoritism. This job was really not easy to do. Hu Zhangning strode into Hu Yan's courtyard. Before he even entered, he called out loudly, "Is Yener here? Father is coming in." As soon as he shouted, Hu Yan, whose face was still filled with anger, had already walked out of the main door. "Of course your daughter is here. Where can a grounded person go? Haha." Hu Zhangning smiled awkwardly when he heard the obvious hidden meaning in her words. Then he stretched his neck and glanced into the room. "Is your maid Xiao Qing all right? All right? She won't die for the time being." Hu Yan's answer was still cold. This time she was really disappointed in her father. It was true that she had done something wrong and she deserved to be grounded. However, he shouldn't have hit little Qing so hard. There was a lot of blood on her butt. She cried for the whole night and was still in a trance at this time. As soon as he heard the words, "won't die," Hu Jiangning knew that his daughter was still angry with him. But as a father, how could he simply apologize? Thinking that if he continued, there might be more sarcastic remarks waiting for him, he simply did not ask any more. Instead he asked straightforwardly, "Yen, father wants to ask you, do you still have the toilet paper that the Yang family sent yesterday?" If it were any other time, Hu Yen would definitely ask why, but now she was angry and turned around to leave without thinking. After a while, when she came back, she put a small packet of untouched toilet paper into Hu Jiangning's hand. "Don't tell me there's only this much?" Looking at the packet in his hand, Hu Jiangning felt that things were going to be bad. Daughter kept a total of 2 small packets and gave the rest to mother and grandmother. "What? Father, are you going to take that half packet too?" Hu Yen was really angry at this time. She thought that this was simply her father taking revenge on her. Because she made him angry, now he didn't even let her use the toilet paper and wanted to give it all away. Hu Jiangning heard the resentment in his daughter's voice and knew that if he didn't explain, it was likely to become a knot between the father and daughter. So he explained the matter again. "It's not that father wants it, but Yen'er knows your grandmother. Whenever she has something good, she must give it to her relatives. See, when the toilet paper came, she gave it all away, but it was still not enough, so she called father and asked me to think of a way. But the housekeeper of the house went to Yangjiao village. The housekeeper of the 6th young master said that the things were shipped from the sea and were not products of our great Ming dynasty. Now he doesn't have any stock in his hands. If he wants it, he can wait until the Heavens Beyond Trading Company opens and buy it there. But your grandmother is an impatient person. How can she wait for so long?" After saying this, Hu Jiangning spread his hands, indicating that he was helpless. Originally, Hu Yen was prepared to ignore her father, but when the matter involved Yang Qindong, she forgot the decision in her heart. The 6th young master doesn't have it? If not, why did he give it to every family yesterday? This doesn't make sense. Yes, if you say that the 6th young master doesn't have it at all, no one will believe it. But thinking about it, there shouldn't be much left, so it should be true. Otherwise, he wouldn't have embarrassed so many officials. But since he did this, the idea of getting the toilet paper from there is very small. Hu Jiangning said as he shook his head. After hearing her father's analysis, Hu Yen didn't have the same opinion. Instead, she said seriously, "Since the 6th young master has it, as long as the people sent out are suitable, they can definitely get some. Why don't I go?" She had always wanted to see what Yang Qindong looked like, but she didn't have the chance. Wasn't now the right time? She was going to get toilet paper for her grandmother, which was a show of filial piety. Even if others knew, they couldn't blame her. Originally, Hu Jiangning was still worried about this matter. His identity as a butler was not easy to use. Did he have to go personally? If he wanted to come, it would be fine, but if he didn't, wouldn't he lose face? Hu Jiangning really didn't have a better way to deal with Yang Qindong. He had just made a great contribution, and the potatoes hadn't ripened yet. Who could force him to do things? Using martial arts to subdue people, how powerful was that young heir beside him? He was definitely not a match for him. If he couldn't do it, Hu Jiangning had no other way. But now that he heard that his daughter was going personally, his eyes lit up. Yes, his daughter was a child. It would be best if she came, but even if she didn't, it wouldn't be a big deal. But the only thing was that his daughter wasn't married yet. If word got out that she was so ostentatious, it would be bad for her reputation. Hu Jiangning didn't reject her immediately. Instead, he looked like he was deep in thought, which made Hu Yen see hope. "Father, just let me go. I promise that after I go, as long as there is a little bit of toilet paper left in Yangjiao village, I will get it for you. Alright, I won't go alone. I'll ask Sister Yang Qi to go with me as a companion. I think outsiders won't be able to say anything." "Sister Yang Qi, are you talking about Yang Duo heir who married Wang Go?" Hu Jiangning immediately mentioned the situation of the Yang family's 7th sister. In the past, Hu Jiangning wouldn't have known about a daughter of the Yang family. But ever since Yang Qindong appeared, Yang Duo heir had become a celebrity and a woman that everyone knew. "Yes, it's her," Hu Yen said proudly. "Yang Duo heir hasn't been to the Yang village yet? This time it's only right for me to accompany her back. When the 6th young master sees his 7th sister and is happy, won't he give me whatever I want?" Hu Yen said proudly, but in her heart she was thinking that since it was her first time meeting Yang Qindong, she should at least bring some greeting gifts. So she set her sights on Yang Duo heir. Hu Jiangning thought about the feasibility of this matter. Indeed, with such a reason, Yang Qindong would have a good impression of her and the chances of her getting toilet paper would increase a lot. But then his gaze fell on his daughter again, looking at her with a faint smile. Chapter 81. Hu Xiangning's gaze frightened Hu Yan. It was as if he had guessed what she was thinking. She blushed and didn't know what to say. Fortunately, Hu Xiangning spoke. All right, since that's the case, I'll send Gao Sheng to go with you. With him, Wang Go won't dare to not let them go. With Hu Xiangning's support, Hu Yan believed that she could bring Yang Duo to the Yang village. She was overjoyed and said, Father is the best. Father has always been the best person. But remember, you must bring back toilet paper this time. Don't be so happy that you forget about the important matter. Hu Xiangning decided to remind his daughter. If she really went to see the sixth young master and forgot about other things, then the gains would not make up for the losses. Yes, father, you can rest assured. Hu Yan patted her towering chest and promised. Then she had a grin on her face. Hu Yan went to prepare and said goodbye to little Qing. It was a pity that she couldn't bring her to see the sixth young master for the first time. This made little Qing even sadder on the bed. In her heart, she even thought that the young miss was different. Hu Xiangning called Gao Xing over and told him to cooperate with the young Mississippi. Then he thought to himself, a grown girl can't be kept at home. Yang Village. In the courtyard, 50 boys and girls were undergoing intensive training. According to Yang Qindong's requirements, they were all between 14 and 18 years old and all of them had good figures. The girls were graceful and the boys were tall and straight. After praising Qiao Yin, he asked Yi Qiuer to make a delicious meal for the 100 boys and girls, letting them fully experience the feeling of warmth. Then he took out the clothes that he had already prepared. When everyone changed into the new clothes, it was as if they had become different people. They were full of spirit and beauty. Not bad, you all have good external conditions, but this is not enough. But that's not enough. If you can't pass the next training, you'll still be eliminated. Do you understand? Yang Qindong stood in front of 100 people like a general who was called out on the battlefield. His voice was like a flood. Understood, the young boys and girls replied nervously. Here they had new clothes to wear and they could eat meat for every meal. Moreover, the dishes were very delicious. Every month they would receive 2 taels of silver. This new life filled them with hope. After experiencing this wonderful feeling, they would not be willing to leave even if they were asked to. How could they not perform well? Yang Qindong's voice echoed throughout the backyard. Stand up straight, look straight ahead, and bend the corners of your mouth to a 45-degree angle. Keep smiling. Remember, the customer is God. You have to try your best to satisfy their needs. Their satisfaction is my satisfaction. Do you understand? Understood. The 100 people replied in unison. Young master, Tiger's Mane suddenly appeared and half knelt in front of Yang Qindong. 7th young mistress is here. 7th sister? Yang Qindong's face showed a gentle expression. It was completely different from when he was lecturing the 100 people. 7th sister is not an outsider. Invite her here. She might be in a better mood if she sees the children. Yes. Young master, Miss Yang has been waiting outside the manor for 4 hours. What do you think? Tiger's Mane did not leave immediately. Instead, he lowered his head and continued to report. Tell her that I have something to do today. I'll see her another day. Yang Qindong waved his hand. Since Miss Yang was late to find out, she had to pay the price. After understanding Yang Qindong's intention, Tiger's Mane stood up and left. Outside the manor, Yang Duo sat in the carriage with a gloomy face. She had a snow-white oval face and a pair of black eyes under her slender eyebrows. However, there was no light in her eyes. Instead, there was a hint of sadness. Once upon a time, Yang Duo was the apple of the Yang family's eye. Because she was the youngest daughter, she was doted on by her parents. When Yang Rong was studying in the study, he was willing to hold this youngest daughter in his arms. That was also the best time of Yang Duo's life. She never had anything to worry about. She could eat delicious food and wear the most beautiful clothes every day. However, everything changed with her father's death. After Yang Rong's death, Yang Duo only felt that the mountain she relied on collapsed. The world in her eyes also lost its former glory. It was as if the entire family changed at that moment. Her brothers and sisters were busy with their own things. Even her only mother had no time to care about other things because of her poor health. It was as if she was forced to grow up overnight. Yang Duo was no longer the little girl who was willing to joke. She became silent. Until she grew up and married Wang Go. Although this marriage did not seem to be blessed by the Yang family, in Yang Duo's eyes, Wang Go was a man who relied on his own struggles to grow up. He should be better than her brothers and sisters who relied on their birth. He should know how to work hard and know how to cherish everything that was hard to come by. When they first got married, the days were barely passable. The relationship between husband and wife was harmonious, but as the influence of the Yang family weakened, her status in the Wang family also declined day by day. In addition, the things she knew were too few, so in the end, she was reduced to the point where the maids in the residence dared to give her a hard time and bully her. At this moment, Yang Duo missed her father's wide embrace. However, she knew that everything was gone and could not be returned. In the most bitter days, Yang Duo even thought of dying. However, when she thought of how she would explain to her parents in the afterlife if she died like this, she could only force herself to live on. She hoped that one day Wang Go would change his mind or someone in the Yang family could revive their glory. This was the sorrow of a woman in a feudal society. Everything had to rely on others. It was extremely difficult to rely on oneself to change anything. Fortunately, a life that should have been hopeless had a comprehensive change because of Yang Dong's unexpected arrival. That morning, the moment Yang Qindong kicked open the Wang family's door, Yang Duo's fate also changed. Her husband and mother-in-law being beaten made them start to face themselves again. At least in these few days, she slowly felt that her dignity was respected again. Although this respect was only on the surface, Yang Duo was still full of hope in her heart. Today, Hu Yan's sudden appearance, accompanied by the captain of the brocade guard, was to invite her back to the Yang family manor. In this regard, Wang Go did not dare to have the slightest objection. He even forced out a smile and said that if she wanted, she could stay at her maternal home for a few more days. Feeling that Wang Go was not concerned but afraid, Yang Duo's heart was filled with mixed feelings. What made her even more afraid was how to face her seventh brother. The person who would only follow behind her when they were young and whom she despised had finally grown up. Not only that, he seemed to be even more outstanding than her brothers. When she thought of the heroic aura that her sixth brother exuded when he kicked open the Wang family's door that morning, Yang Duo blushed with shame and did not dare to meet him. This was also why after a few days she still did not come to the Yang family manor to take a look. In the carriage, Yang Duo was very nervous, which made Hu Yan, who should have been nervous, relax a lot. She began to comfort Yang Duo. "Sister Duo heir, the sixth young master is your brother and is so nervous about you. What are you afraid of? Listen to your younger sister. When you see him, you should reprimand him first to suppress his imposing manner." Hu Yan thought of Yang Qindong being scolded and not daring to talk back and couldn't help but giggle. Scold sixth brother? What? Also, what should I scold him for? Yang Duo's face was filled with confusion. Clearly she did not understand what Hu Yan meant. You. Hu Yan put her finger to her mouth and rolled her eyes. Suddenly she said in surprise, "Scold him for beating your husband and mother-in-law. Let him give you an explanation. In short, you have to shock him first and let him know how powerful you are." Hu Yan's idea made Yang Duo shake her head and say, "I'm not powerful. Otherwise, I wouldn't have suffered such a big loss in the Wang family. Forget it, I'd better not scold sixth brother. He beat the imperial court officials for me. He took a great risk." Hu Yan slowly closed her mouth. She knew that it was impossible to see Yang Qindong suffer. "Seventh young lady, the young master invites you in." Outside, Hu Meng arrived in front of the carriage. He signaled Yang Lu with his eyes and Yang Lu replaced the original coachman. Gao Xing was also sent far away. Yang Lu then drove the carriage into the Yang clan manor. The East faction protector, who was standing nearby, saw that the carriage was driven by the Yang family's servant, so he did not come up to check. After a few days of contact, the two sides had a tacit understanding. The East faction protector and the genie guard would not take the initiative to trouble the Yang family. The Yang family servants also followed the rules. All the carriages that came here were checked by those people, except for the Yang family's carriages. In Yang Qindong's words, this was the Yang family manor. Did the Yang family need to check their own home? What was the reason? For this matter, the East faction protector also reported the matter to Wang Zhen, but the answer he got was that since the sixth young master said so, he would do as he said. The carriage smoothly drove into the Yang family manor. Through the curtain of the carriage, Hu Yan looked out curiously. However, it didn't seem to be any different from the other manors, which made her feel a little disappointed. It was not until the carriage drove into the square in the backyard of the Yang family manor that the scene in front of her changed. She saw 100 boys and girls wearing clothes that she had never seen before standing under the scorching sun, motionless. God! The clothes they wear are so beautiful. Hu Yan's gaze was deeply attracted by the scene in front of her as she spoke like a love-struck fool. Chapter 82. Yang Duo, on the other hand, was extremely nervous. She didn't know what to say when she saw Yang Qindong. She thought that her actions had already lost face for the Yang family. She wasn't mentally prepared yet. The carriage finally stopped not far from Yang Qindong. From here one could clearly see Yang Qindong dressed in green, sitting under a parasol, leisurely drinking tea. From time to time he would look at the scene. Whenever he found someone slacking while standing, he would shout from afar. Every time this happened, the person who was shouted would straighten their body, as if their entire appearance had changed in an instant. Stop! Yang Qindong's attention was drawn to the carriage when Yang Lu shouted for it to stop. Then he came over with a smile on his face. As he walked he said, "Seventh sister, I missed you so much." As he spoke, Yang Qindong had already arrived in front of the carriage. Then he reached out his hand and lifted the curtain of the carriage. Then he smiled and reached out his hand to touch the person in the carriage. This was originally Yang Qindong's way of welcoming seventh sister. He hoped that a joke would make her relax. How could the meticulous sixth young master not know that seventh sister must have had a hard time in the Wang family all these years? She had probably developed a habit of being cautious. Welcoming her in such a joking way was to make her relax. But he never thought that his hand would reach out and grab the person. But why did this person look so unfamiliar? Her skin was whiter than snow, and her eyes were like a pool of clear water. When she looked around, she had an elegant and noble temperament. Her eyes were very big and her eyelashes were very long. At this moment she was blinking and looking at him. That cute and chubby little face was as red as an apple. In fact, Hu Yin really did not expect this to happen. At this time she was also frightened by the scene in front of her. When a pair of big hands were stuck under her armpits, her beautiful face had already turned pale at this moment. Shua! Yang Qindong's reaction was not slow. When he felt that he had grabbed the wrong person, he quickly retracted his hand and immediately bowed his head to apologize. "I'm sorry, Mississippi. I thought it was my seventh sister." "I'm here." A timid voice sounded. Yang Duo popped her head out from behind Hu Yin, who was still in a panic. "Sixth brother, this is Miss Hu Yin, Lord Hu Jiangning's daughter." As if she felt the awkward atmosphere, Yang Duo hurriedly introduced Hu Yan's identity. Hearing seventh sister say that this girl was Hu Yin, Yang Qindong could not help sizing her up a few more times. She was indeed a great beauty. In terms of looks, she was similar to Zhao Liang, but her body was more voluptuous. "So it's Miss Hu. My apologies." Yang Qindong's reaction was fast. After knowing Hu Yan's identity, he immediately changed into a polite appearance, making people unable to get angry even if they wanted to. Yang Qindong took the initiative to apologize, which made Hu Yan a little embarrassed. She really didn't mean it. In addition, she had been educated since she was young. No matter what, she was still a daughter of a noble family. Of course, it was not good for her to blame the other party for such a thing. Hu Yan's face was red like the sunset. She softly said, "Hello, sixth young master." "Hello, hello." Yang Qindong quickly returned to normal. After answering with a smile, he reached out and helped Yang Duo, who had already squeezed forward, get off the carriage. As for Hu Yin, Yang Qindong did not want to offend her. He reached out and took the stool handed over by Yang Lu, allowing her to smoothly walk down by herself. Yang Duo did not pay attention to Hu Yan's change. She had been chirping like a lark in the car just now, but now she was as quiet as a thrush and didn't say a word. Most of her attention was on her sixth brother, Yang Qindong. With Yang Qindong holding her hand, she heard her sixth brother's voice. "Seventh sister, these people are the people I've trained to serve the immortal abode in the future. In other words, they are the waiters in the wine shop. Do you see the clothes those girls are wearing? I call them kipeos. They are the best clothes to show off a woman's perfect figure. The other big sisters in the family have all tried them on before. Why don't you find one and change into it too? A beautiful set of clothes can change a person's mood at any time." Yang Qindong didn't ask Yang Duo what she meant. He reached out and called Xiaoyin over. Bring my seventh sister to change into a qipao." "Young master, what about that Miss Hu?" Xiaoyin looked at Hu Yin, who seemed to have been left out. "If Miss Hu is willing, she can also try on a qipao. There are many different types and colors prepared. Just treat it as my apology for my earlier rudeness. Yang Qindong chuckled and turned to look at Hu Yan. On the way, Hu Yan had been teaching Yang Duo to be more generous. She had even told her to teach Yang Qindong a lesson and show him who was boss. However, when she saw the real person, she immediately softened. Yang Duo acted as if she had returned home. She didn't even wait for Hu Yan to say whether she agreed or not before grabbing her. Come, let's go take a look at those kipeos. Let's see if they are really as beautiful as they seem. Three women made a show. Qiao Yin, Yang Duo, and Hu Yan all walked towards the rear courtyard. Yang Qindong smiled as he watched the three leave. When they were no longer in sight, he turned around. Tiger's Mane and Yang Lu were already half kneeling on the ground. Didn't you check the carriage before? Clearly, Yang Qindong was reprimanding them for their earlier rudeness to Hu Yan. It is this subordinate's dereliction of duty. I originally thought that since it was Miss Seven's carriage, there was no need to check it. Tiger's Mane lowered his head. He knew that he had really made a mistake this time. Fortunately, it was Miss Hu Yan who came. If it was an assassin, the sixth young master would have been in danger. The Yang clan was his own family. There was no need to check. This was Yang Qindong's previous order. There was nothing wrong with them following orders. For a moment, the sixth young master couldn't punish them. He could only shake his head and say, "Forget it. This won't happen again. In the future, we still have to check the carriage. At the very least, we can't let any bad people sneak in. Also, have you prepared the people I asked you to prepare to serve Miss Seven?" "They are ready. They are in the rear courtyard. I'll tell them to get ready immediately." Tiger's Mane knew that this matter was over. However, he definitely couldn't be so careless next time. "Good. Go and tell them to get ready." Yang Qindong nodded. Then, as if he had thought of something, he asked, "That's right. Do you know why Miss Hu Yan came here?" From the information he received from the Security Bureau, he already knew that Hu Yan was paying attention to him. Yang Qindong narcissistically thought that the other party probably had a good impression of him. However, even if she had a good impression of him, it was impossible for her to directly come to his door. At that time, girls weren't that open. This was especially true for young ladies of noble families. They were extremely reserved. "I don't know." Tiger's Mane shook his head. Although the capital's Security Bureau's capabilities were constantly increasing after investing a large amount of money, he still didn't know what had just happened to the Hu clan. "Forget it. Let's go." With the idea of taking things one step at a time, Yang Qindong had Tiger's Mane and the others leave. As for himself, he returned to the large umbrella. His gaze fell on the 100 young men and women who were still practicing their stances in the distance. In the fitting room in the backyard, Xiao Yin and the other two women were currently seriously choosing the most suitable qipao for them. Among the three, it wasn't Xiao Yin's first time in this room. She was also the first to choose. It was a set of sapphire blue qipao that represented purity. When paired with her petite face, it appeared very cute. Yang Duo chose a yellow qipao with golden edges. She was tall to begin with, so wearing it on her slim body made her look even more elegant. Hu Yan took the longest time to choose. In her eyes, it seemed that every one of them was very beautiful. In front of her were beautiful clothes that she had never seen before. In the end, she still chose a white qipao. This was a color that went with all kinds of colors. When worn, it gave off a pure and flawless color that didn't even have a speck of dust. In the fitting room, there were several mirrors that were said to be divine objects in the palace. It was very good for them to see their own style through these mirrors. Of course, these mirrors couldn't be leaked out yet. Qiao Yin also explained this point to the two women. Otherwise, the mirrors in the palace wouldn't seem so noble and mysterious. However, Qiao Yin also said that mirrors like these would be circulated in the market in the future. It was just that there wouldn't be a lot of them. In accordance with the principle of rare things being valuable, this would show off their nobility. As for the mirrors, the two women only looked at them curiously. If it was any other time, perhaps they would be attracted. However, right now, their attention was completely diverted by the qipao on their bodies. Right now, they were looking at themselves as if they had just met each other. In their minds, they never thought that one day they would be so beautiful. To say something narcissistic, at this moment even they were attracted to themselves. All right. Seeing Hu Yan and Yang Duo spin in front of the mirrors who knew how many times, Xiao Yin smiled like a flower and said, "The ugly daughter-in-law will have to see her parents-in-law sooner or later. Let's let the young master take a look and let him give his opinion." The young master said that women wear beautiful clothes for others to see. As a man, his opinion will be more pertinent. Therefore they have more authority and qualifications to judge. These words caused Hu Yen to immediately cover her mouth and chuckle. The Dong Shui is really something. He clearly wants to take advantage of others, yet he still makes the reason sound so dignified. Could it be that Miss Hu is afraid of letting the young master see your current appearance? As a woman, Xiao Yin had long felt that Hu Yen looked at the young master differently. However, she was already prepared to share the young master with others. Furthermore, with her status, she would be very happy if she could be a bed-warming maid in the future. Naturally, she didn't have the authority to be jealous of others. Chapter 83. Why would I be scared? Let's see then. Hu Yen seemed to be throwing a tantrum as she spoke, but she was probably the only one who knew what she was really thinking. She really wanted to see what kind of expression Yang Qindong would have when he saw her in this white qipao. In the backyard, the 100 young men and women had already switched to walking. A paper bowl was placed on top of each of their heads. In Yang Qindong's words, they had to keep the upper half of their bodies steady while walking. They absolutely couldn't allow their paper bowls to fall. If they did, they would be punished with standing for an extra hour and no meat for dinner. It wasn't a heavy punishment, but none of the 100 future employees of the immortal abode wanted to be punished. They didn't know if they would be disqualified if they were punished too many times. If that was the case, they would have to return to their old lives. They could only eat 2 meals a day and they weren't even full. Here they could eat 3 meals a day and there was meat for every meal. They had new clothes to wear and they even had a monthly salary. Originally, Yang Qindong was staring at the crowd and pointing out their mistakes. However, when 3 graceful figures suddenly appeared in his peripheral vision, Yang Qindong was completely unable to remain calm. In his line of sight, the 3 beauties were like fairies descending to the mortal world as they walked towards him one by one. This caused his heartbeat to accelerate, and his face began to heat up. Even his gaze became infatuated. Seeing Yang Qindong's dazed expression, the 3 girls couldn't help but feel amused. In the end, it was Xiao Yin who was the closest to him, who slowly walked up and whispered into his ear, "Young master, you're almost drooling." Oh. Yang Qindong, who had lost his composure, hurriedly raised his hand to wipe his mouth. However, how could he wipe anything? Only then did he realize that Xiao Yin was teasing him. He couldn't help but awkwardly say, "Yin, you're being naughty again." Ah. When she saw that Yang Qindong really was wiping his mouth, Xiao Yin skipped away with a smile. This scene also caused Yang Duo and Hu Yen to cover their mouths and laugh. "You actually dare to laugh at this young master? In order to punish you all, someone come and serve me with a brush." Yang Qindong saw that the 3 women were so beautiful, and each of them had an extraordinary temperament. It really felt like 100 flowers were blooming, and he had the idea of painting them as a memento. After Yang Qindong shouted, Tiger's mane had already turned around and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was holding a wooden frame in his hands. That was the so-called easel that the 6th young master had requested. Does Yang Qindong know how to draw? Naturally, the answer was yes. As an outstanding member of the Wolf's Fang external operations team, drawing was a skill that must be mastered. Among them, he was best at sketching. The so-called easel was prepared according to the standard of sketching. When the easel was placed there, Yang Qindong took out a hard pencil from the warehouse and had Xiao Yin stand in front of him. Then he began to draw. After a few strokes, a rough outline appeared on the paper. This was the first time Xiao Yin had seen the young master draw. Out of absolute trust, she stood there without moving. On the other hand, Yang Duo and Hu Yen, who had nothing to do for the time being, came up to join in on the fun. When the 2 arrived in front of the easel and looked down, their originally playful expressions immediately turned into incomparable astonishment. With just a few strokes, an undulating and curving line was outlined. After the shape, structure, characteristics, rhythm, and charm were displayed one by one, Xiao Yin seemed to come alive on the paper. What kind of drawing technique is this? Yang Duo and Xiao Yin both had extremely astonished expressions. They were both daughters of noble families and were all descendants of famous families. They understood drawing techniques and were even quite good at it. It was because of this that they were even more astonished by the ability that Yang Qindong displayed. I call it sketching. Yang Qindong raised his head slightly and gave the 2 girls a charming smile. Then he continued to draw and complete the rest of his work. From start to finish, it took only half the time it took to drink a cup of tea. The sketch was completed and Xiao Yin was vividly engraved on the paper. Yang Qindong stopped and nodded. Not bad. You didn't lose your skill. That's it. Wow. So beautiful. The two women saw that the painting had been completed in such a short period of time. Moreover, the painting was so accurate that Xiao Yin's most beautiful side was fully displayed. Aside from the lack of color, everything else that should be displayed was displayed. This caused them to make a fuss over nothing. Yang Qindong had heard a lot of compliments recently, so he didn't have much of a reaction. He just smiled at the two and asked, "Which one of you will go first? We can be drawn too?" Hu Yen pointed her slender finger at herself in surprise. Originally, she thought that Yang Qindong could draw Xiaoyin so quickly because they understood each other. That was why he could draw so skillfully. However, this was the first time they had met. "Of course, if you refuse, I won't force you." Yang Qindong showed a sincere smile again. He didn't want to force people to do things. "I won't refuse. Then draw me first." When Hu Yen heard that she could also receive such treatment, she was instantly overjoyed. Then she walked to where Xiaoyin was standing and stood with her chest puffed out. "Don't be so stiff. Act more naturally." Yang Qindong chuckled when he saw that Hu Yan's entire body seemed to have been filled with lead, resembling a zombie that had lost a portion of her spiritual energy. Oh. Hu Yan, who was extremely obedient, quickly relaxed her body. It was also at that moment that she heard Yang Qindong's voice. "Very good. That's it. Don't move. It'll be done soon." Yang Qindong seemed to have found an excellent angle and began to paint with great vigor. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yang Qindong finished the last stroke and laughed. "It's done." He finished drawing just like that? With a trace of suspicion, Hu Yen walked over. However, at this moment Yang Qindong had already begun to draw for seventh sister, Yang Duo. Hu Yen walked over and looked at the drawing of her face and expression that had been placed to the side. The lines were so beautiful and the curves of her body were so real. It was as if they were lifelike. Her charm, cuteness, and beauty were completely reflected on the paper. At this moment she felt a little intoxicated. Thinking that the two of them had only met for the first time, how could he understand her so clearly in such a short period of time? Hu Yen couldn't help but look up. She wanted to see the appearance of this man. She wanted to understand him and imprint him deeply in her mind. When she looked up, she saw the scene of Yang Qindong seriously drawing for seventh sister. People say that people who work seriously are the most beautiful because at that time, their whole body is focused and full of charm. When she looked up, she saw this scene. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up, the confident light in his eyes, and the fact that he was able to write as fast as lightning while remaining calm as usual, coupled with his resolute face and bright eyes, all of these attracted Hu Yen. At this moment, she felt as if there was a little rabbit in her arms that was jumping wildly. "Done." With a wave of his hand, Yang Qindong, who finished the last stroke, laughed and said that it was done. He put down the hard pencil in his hand. Yang Duo couldn't wait any longer. She ran a few steps and came in front of her portrait. Immediately, she looked like she was in a daze. People say that the person who understands you the most is yourself. But this time Yang Duo felt that this seemed to be wrong. Because from the painting she seemed to be seeing herself for the first time. It turned out that she was so beautiful. She wasn't the useless stupid girl that the Wang family said was even worse than a servant girl. Yang Duo stood there in a daze. After a while, tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes. Yang Qindong's heart softened as he looked at her. He stood up and went forward to hug seventh sister in his arms. The painting is to show your most beautiful side and preserve it for later memories. But what we should do is to cherish the present, cherish our youth, your beauty, and all the good things we have. Seventh sister, if life in the Wang family is not happy, then leave there. Believe in sixth brother, I will let Wang go divorce you. There won't be any bad memories left. It was the most basic common sense to persuade people to reconcile and not to divorce. But now, Yang Qindong was indeed persuading his seventh sister to leave her husband's family. In modern terms, it was divorce. But when Hu Yen and Xiaoyin heard this, they felt that the sixth young master was right. It wasn't abrupt at all and it wasn't annoying at all. Seventh sister in his arms was clearly moved, but in the end, she clenched her teeth and shook her head. Sixth brother, I still want to try. Can you give me a bit more time? Yes, seventh sister will make the decision. Sixth brother just wants to tell you that no matter when, no matter what decision you make, sixth brother will support you unconditionally. Because in sixth brother's eyes, seventh sister will always be the best and most beautiful girl. As for the others, they can think whatever they want and see whatever they want. Even if Butcher Zhang dies, I won't eat that pig with hair. The originally very warm scene was indeed because of Yang Qindong's last proverb that broke the mood. For a moment, the three women all laughed out loud, and the atmosphere at the scene also became a lot more harmonious because of this sentence. The three girls each held the painting with their own picture in their hands. They loved it so much that if anyone wanted to snatch it from them, there would be a fierce struggle. Next, with the company of the three goddess-like women, Yang Qindong felt that life was extremely comfortable. Even time seemed to pass very quickly. What's wrong? It was already time for lunch. He brought the three girls who had changed back to their original clothes, to the front of the crop field. The four of them personally plucked several stalks of potatoes, about 40 to 50 caddies. It was the first time the three girls had done something like this. Naturally, they were very happy and couldn't stop smiling. On the other hand, the East faction guards who were in charge of watching over them were very distressed. Chapter 84. Their duty was to guard this place. Without orders from above, no one was allowed to casually approach this place and pick the fruits. However, the orders given by the higher-ups depended on the person involved. For example, Yang Qindong, the discoverer and cultivator, was definitely not an exception. The fields here all belonged to the Yang family, so of course he could do whatever he wanted. As long as it was not a large-scale harvest, even the people of the East faction guards had no right to interfere. Each of the girls carried the freshly dug potatoes and returned to the kitchen with Yang Qindong. Ichioer had already prepared everything they needed. Soon the aroma spread. At noon, the four of them ate until their stomachs were round and full. They were extremely satisfied. You have to learn to share. Good things can't be eaten by yourself. When you leave, each of you bring some for your family to taste. Yang Qindong smiled as he looked at Yang Duo and Hu Yen. Seeing how they looked as if their bellies were about to burst, he couldn't help but stretch out his right hand and lightly scratch the tips of their noses. This was originally Yang Qindong's habitual action. In the past he often played like this with Xiaoyin. However, this time he was facing seventh sister Yang Duo and Hu Yen, who he had just met for the first time. Yang Duo was slightly better. She just treated it as her brother joking with her. However, Hu Yan's face immediately flushed red after being scratched. This seemingly habitual action by Yang Qindong was actually very intimate and flirtatious in her eyes. Only after he scratched her nose did Yang Qindong feel that his actions were somewhat inappropriate. However, the matter had already been done. It was too late to apologize. Instead, it would destroy this beautiful atmosphere. He immediately clapped his hands and said, "Sister Chioer, bring a few of the drinks that we prepared beforehand." Ichioer complied. Then, a few servants carried a few transparent cups and placed them on the table. The cups were transparent glasses from the future. There were a few drinks that had already been prepared. The moment the things were placed on the table, other than Xiaoyin who had already seen the transparent glass, Hu Yen and Yang Duo were once again shocked by the things in front of them. They realized that as long as they stayed in the Yang manner, there would always be all kinds of surprises waiting for them, and they were all existences that were far beyond their imagination. Don't just stare at the glass. Why don't you try this drink? Yang Qindong smiled as he looked at the shocked duo. You call this a glass? So exquisite, so beautiful? Hu Yen couldn't help but ask curiously. Yes, this is called a glass cup. It's an improved product of colored glass. It's more transparent and gives people a clearer feeling. As Yang Qindong explained, he picked up the glass in front of him and took a sip. Try it. The drinks inside are the real delicacies. I guarantee that none of you have tasted it before. Of course, no one had tasted it before. No matter if it was the apple juice, orange juice, peach juice, milk tea or fruit tea placed in front of them, none of them had ever seen or heard of them before, let alone tasted them. The three women imitated Yang Qindong and began to taste it. They couldn't stop once they tasted it. In the end, they drank until their bellies were round and full. At this moment they were a bit regretful. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have eaten so much at lunch. Now that there was delicious food in front of them, they could only look and not drink. It was too much of a pity. The three women ate and drank their fill. It was already the middle of the afternoon. Only then did they feel that time had passed too quickly. Thinking that they were ready to go home, Yang Duo and Hu Yan's faces revealed expressions of reluctance. Seeing the two's intentions, Yang Qindong said to Yang Duo, "Seventh sister, this is your maiden home. If you don't want to go back, just stay here." This was something that Yang Qindong could only say to Yang Duo, but he couldn't do anything about Hu Yen. If he were to ask her to stay, he would definitely be treated as a lecher. He was afraid that when night fell, Hu Zhangning would kill him with a knife. "Thank you, sixth brother. Seventh sister, I still have to go back." No matter what, I am still a member of the Wang clan. Yang Duo shook her head and rejected Yang Qindong's good intentions. However, from her words, it could be heard that she was somewhat moved by the sixth young master's suggestion. That's right. Instead of wasting her youth and beauty on Wang Go who didn't know how to cherish himself, why not learn to be herself? Were other people's opinions really that important? Knowing that seventh sister wanted to be strong before she made a decision, she had to do her own part. Yang Qindong couldn't persuade her anymore. However, he was not completely unprepared. He clapped his hands 3 times in the air, and then 10 young girls dressed like maids came in from outside. Looking at the 10 girls walking over, Yang Duo and Hu Yen were stunned. Even Xiao Yin, who didn't understand, looked at Yang Qindong with a puzzled expression. She didn't understand what the young master wanted to do. The 10 of you listen up. In the future, my seventh sister Yang Duo will be your master. You have to serve her with all your heart. Every month, this young master will give you 2 taels of silver as a monthly allowance. During festivals, your family will also receive some rice, noodles, and meat. In short, you will not be treated unfairly. However, if I hear that seventh sister has suffered any grievances in the Wang family in the future, then each and every one of you will be punished. Do you understand? After the 10 people stood in place, Yang Qindong's cold voice suddenly rang out. Yang Qindong, who was like a completely different person from before, unconsciously emitted the aura of a superior person, causing Hu Yen, who was watching from the side, to be a little dazed. How could this person change so quickly? Just now he was like the sun hanging high in the sky which could melt people. At this moment he was like the cold wind of winter, making people feel a chill go straight to the bottom of their hearts. We understand. The 10 girls all bowed and replied in unison. Only then did the chill on Yang Qindong's body disappear. He then looked at the stunned Yang Duo and said, "Seventh sister, this is what sixth brother prepared for you. They will be by your side in the future. If you need anything, just call them. Sixth brother will settle all the expenses with them. Don't worry." With Yang Qindong's current financial resources, how many people couldn't be supported by him? It was just giving seventh sister 10 maids, it wasn't worth mentioning. As for Yang Duo, when she saw the 10 maids, she couldn't help but cry. When she married into the Wang family, there was a maid by her side. Unfortunately, after a serious illness, the maid couldn't survive and died. Only she was left alone. When she was bullied, she could only silently endure it in her heart. Ever since sixth brother appeared, everything had changed. The Wang family no longer dared to scold and beat her like before. Not only that, there were now 10 more maids. This was equivalent to raising her status all of a sudden. As such, she no longer had to worry about others giving her a hard time. This time she truly felt the warmth of a family. Sixth brother, thank you. She stretched out her hand and tightly patted Yang Qindong's big hand. Haha, seventh sister, you are my biological sister. Doing anything for you is what I should do. Alright, when you leave in the future, bring some things back. With these 10 maids, 1,000 taels a month won't be enough. I'll give you double. 2,000 taels shouldn't be a problem. When the time comes, don't have the money to reward them. That would be too embarrassing. Also, prepare some food and clothes. If you are in a bad mood, don't eat with the Yang family and just cook for yourself. But there is one thing you must not tell the other sisters. Otherwise, they will say that sixth brother favors one and discriminates against the other. When he said the last sentence, Yang Qindong had a bitter expression, as if he had suffered a great grievance. Yang Duo, who was originally very touched, was about to cry again. However, when she heard that she couldn't tell the other older sisters, she immediately pursed her lips and smiled. At that moment, she really looked back and smiled charmingly, making the 6 palaces pale in comparison. However, after laughing, Yang Duo still shook her head. You'll be paying for these maids' expenses. Seventh sister, why would I need so much money? 1,000 taels a month is more than enough to spend. Yang Duo wanted to refuse, but unexpectedly, Xiao Yin spoke up. Seventh young lady, this is a small token of appreciation from the young master. You should accept it. Xiao Yin's identity was only Yang Qindong's personal maid. Logically speaking, she didn't have the qualifications to speak up in this kind of situation. But everyone could see that the sixth young master's attitude towards her was very unusual. If things didn't go well, she might become a concubine in the future. This was equivalent to marrying into the Yang family and becoming half a Yang family member. Who would look down on her then? Right. Seventh sister only needs to accept this from sixth brother. Save up the excess and use it as a dowry in the future. Yang Chendong chuckled. But when he said this, Yang Duo's face turned even redder. She even buried her head deeply. After dealing with Yang Duo's matter, Yang Chendong looked at Hu Yen. Miss Hu, thank you for accompanying my seventh sister this time to relax. In order to express my gratitude, I have prepared some things. I'll have to trouble you to bring them along when you leave. Yang Chendong didn't say what it was, and Hu Yen was smart enough not to ask. It was as if everything was in tacit agreement. An hour later, the 3 carriages slowly left the gates of the Yang village. There were 2 more carriages than when they came. Not only that, there were 5 maids standing beside each carriage. These were all going to follow Yang Duo back to the Wang family. It could be imagined that when these people arrived at the Wang family, Wang Go and that unreasonable mother, Lady Yen, would be shocked. Not to mention how Yang Duo was after returning to the Wang family. After Hu Yen entered the city, she separated from Yang Duo. Behind the carriage she was in, there was another carriage following. The coachman was Yang Lu. This carriage was a gift from Yang Chendong to Hu Yen. He said it was to thank her for bringing seventh sister out to relax. But as for the real reason, only the 2 of them knew. Chapter 85. Hu Yen, who was sitting in the carriage, had a look of joy on her face. She even thought shyly that this wouldn't be the engagement gift from Dong Shuai, right? But she just didn't know what was inside. Was there the toilet paper that she promised her father? She was excited and worried all the way. When she arrived at the gate of the Hu mansion, Lieutenant Gao, who followed her, immediately asked the gatekeeper to find someone to unload the things. After the bags were unloaded, Yang Lu drove the carriage back, leaving behind Hu Jiangning, who had heard the news and rushed over with a look of surprise. Yen, what are these things? Don't tell me it's all toilet paper? Hu Jiangning asked in confusion. Father can see for himself. Daughter is tired and wants to go back to rest. She was holding a small package which contained her white Chong Sam and the sketch. In her opinion, these were the most important things. But after answering this sentence, Hu Yen didn't care what Yang Chendong gave her. She turned and left, leaving Hu Jiangning with a puzzled look. He had to let people carry the things into the courtyard first and then look at them one by one. Needless to say, there must be toilet paper in the gift, and there was a lot of it. In the morning, the housekeeper of the Hu mansion and the housekeepers of the other ministers went to Yang village to ask for toilet paper, but to no avail. Then Hu Yen appeared. Presumably they were more or less related, so this thing naturally couldn't be left out. Not only that, but there were also other good things sent, such as toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, cosmetics and so on. There were also food such as freshly dug potatoes and boxes of canned fish. There were all kinds of flavors in the canned fish. With the geographical location of Chichen City, fishing was not a problem at all. As long as this thing was sealed well and the taste was unique, there would naturally be no problems. The things were opened one by one, and Hu Jiangning sighed. This Yang Shima was really generous. Of course, what made him the happiest was that these were all obtained by Hu Yen. Did that mean that this kid also took a fancy to his daughter? Whether it was a match in terms of social status or talent, it seemed that the marriage between the 2 families was more suitable. 100 Flowers Hall. Yesterday, after the 2 songs were played, the reputation of this place went up a notch. Tonight, there were even more people coming, which made the head procuress, Mu Lily, smile all night long. It was a pity that there were too few tables in 100 Flowers Hall, and the place was not big enough. Otherwise she would be able to earn more money. Just like before, the moment the 2 songs were played, everyone on the stage cheered. At the same time, voices urging them to stay rose and fell, as if they wanted to flip the roof of 100 Flowers Hall over. However, Madame Shui paid no attention to this and continued to walk down the platform. There were a total of 2 new songs. If she sang them over and over again, she was afraid that sooner or later she would get tired of listening to them. This was not what she wanted. Madame Shui walked down the platform. Many people in the crowd disagreed with her. They all shouted to express their dissatisfaction. However, among the crowd, there was a man dressed in a brocade robe. He had a pointy mouth and cheeks that resembled a monkey's cheeks. Instead, he used all of his strength to raise his hands and flip the table in front of him to the ground. Following that, he shouted, "This general didn't allow you to leave? You can try to leave." The big movement of the table being flipped naturally attracted countless people's attention. For a moment, the hall became quiet. Even Madame Shui, who was about to leave, could not help but stop and look back. It was precisely this glance that caused him to be filled with terror. She knew that man. It was Shi Sheng, the Jianghu of the embroidered uniform guard. When it came to Shisheng, not many people knew of him. However, when it came to his elder brother, very few people didn't know of him. He was the eunuch Xining, the eunuch who betrayed the great Ming dynasty and was executed by 1,000 cuts. However, the change of the Tumu castle had not happened yet. Naturally, Xining was still in power and was even favored by the emperor. He also had a good relationship with Wang Zhen, the chief steward of the ceremony directorate. With such a powerful elder brother, Shisheng naturally did things without scruples. In addition, he was a Jianghu of the embroidered uniform guard, which made him even more domineering. Just last year he bullied Jianghu, the Duke of Ying, who had been a senior official for several dynasties and made outstanding contributions to the army. Jianghu did not dare to say anything and had a lot of land taken away from him. Today he was here and flipped the table. How could the others not be shocked when they saw him? Especially Zhang De, the second son of Jianghu, who was in the crowd. Although his eyes were full of hatred, he did not have the courage to intervene in this matter. Even Duke Ying's son did not dare to intervene. Seeing this, the others could only endure and did not dare to say a word. Shisheng seemed to be very satisfied with the way people looked at him. He laughed and pointed at Madame Shui, saying, "I haven't heard enough. Sing one more time." As an entertainer, Madame Shui had seen many things like this. However, she still felt nervous. She felt that Shisheng did not come just to listen to the song. He probably had other purposes. Since he was not as powerful, he had to obey. Seeing Shisheng's domineering and arrogant attitude, Madame Shui knew that she could not avoid it today. She had to force a smile and bow to him. Then she turned to the stage. The procuress, Mu Lily, immediately arranged for someone to prepare a new table and send it to Shisheng. Shisheng then crossed his legs and raised his head, looking insufferably arrogant as he continued to listen to Madame Shui's song. "Your Excellency, Madame Shui's skin is really good. If I can hug her for one night, my life will not be in vain." The subordinate beside him flattered and looked at Madame Shui on the stage, drooling. "It's not difficult. I have to be on duty tonight. Forget it. Tomorrow is my day off. I'll come here to have fun for one night. By the way, check the person behind Baihua Hall. Tell him that I like this place and want to buy it." Shisheng said indifferently. Even Duke Ying had been bullied by him. She was just an insignificant entertainer. How could she jump to the top? "Yes, Your Excellency. I'll do it right away." The servant answered and turned to leave. A pimp who was serving tea to a guest at a nearby table had his ears pricked up. When he heard these words, he immediately revealed a look of fear. However, he quickly pretended to be calm. After thinking for a while, he went backstage. There was a limit to what a pimp could do. The benefits he could get from the kind of place he worked for were proportional. Baihua Hall's business was very good now, and they usually received a lot of rewards. However, if Madame Shui was replaced, they would get less money if something happened to her. They might not even be able to continue their business. For his own sake, he had to tell the procuress Mu Lily about this. Backstage, Mu Lily was looking at the stage with a worried expression. She was worried that something would happen later. As the big sister of the 100 Flowers Hall's procuress, she naturally knew what kind of person Shisheng was and what kind of morals he had. "Miss Mu." The pimp came to Mu Lily's side and whispered in her ear what he had just heard. Then Mu Lily's expression turned into one of shock. Her originally pretty face turned pale at this moment. What should we do?" Under Shisheng's threat, Madame Shui had to sing the two songs again. Fortunately, there were no more heckling. Shisheng walked out of Baihua Hall accompanied by several of his men. Everything seemed to be fine after the storm. Only Mu Lily, who had heard the news, knew that it was not that Shisheng wanted to stop, but that he had regarded Baihua Hall as his property. That was why he did not make trouble. Madame Shui went backstage, exhaled a long breath of fragrance, and wiped her forehead gently. When she saw Mu Lily coming from afar, she forced a smile and said, "Sister, I'm fine." "Well, it's not fine this time. It's serious." Mu Lily sighed and told Xiao Yushue what she had just heard from the pimp. "What?" Sure enough, Madame Shui, who had heard the news, didn't look any better than Mu Lily did just now. "Oh, sister, do you think our boss can sell Baihua Hall to Shisheng? If it's someone else, I don't know. But who is Shisheng? Last year he even dared to occupy Duke Ying's fertile land and nothing happened. I heard that the emperor punished them later, but now they have regained their prestige, haven't they?" She did not say whether it was possible or not, but the comparison between Duke Ying and Madame Shui had proved her idea. "What should we do? What should we do?" Madame Shui was really anxious at this moment. She had thought that she could make more money as a young actress and a top courtesan. In this way, even if she was old and could not sing anymore, she would have enough money to spend the rest of her life. She could even find a good man to marry as long as she kept her chastity. But all of this seemed to have become a flower in the mirror, the moon in the water. Once 100 Flowers Hall became Shi Sheng's property with the other party's character, he would probably eat her up that very night. Then she would become a money-making tool. Once she grew old, she would probably become useless. Madame Xue shook her head desperately at the thought of all her efforts over the years. Her face was full of unwillingness. Wuxia, I don't want to do this. Is this our fate? We can't change it. Didn't you see that when Shi Sheng stood out, no one dared to say anything? This is the general trend. We can't change it. Mu Lily hugged Madame Xue and cried bitterly together. Chapter 86. No. There must be a way. There must be a way. Lady Snow shook her head, unwilling to accept such a fate. She had just learned 2 new songs from Dong Shuai, and the whole capital knew about her. Seeing that everything was going well, she was unwilling to let her dream end before it even began. Yes, Dong Shuai. For some reason, Yang Qindong's handsome and confident face flashed through Lady Snow's mind. The capital in the 9th month was not as hot as it was during the day at night, and when the cold wind blew, one would feel a chill. Outside the Yang village, Yang Qindong had washed up and was about to go to bed. At this time, Tiger's Mane's voice came from outside. Young master, Lady Snow wants to see you. What is she doing here so late at night? Hearing that Lady Snow was here, he looked at the time. The curfew should have started in the capital. It would be very difficult for Lady Snow to return to 100 Flowers Hall at this time. While Yang Qindong was still thinking about what could make a girl come to him so late at night, Tiger's Mane's voice sounded again. Young master, do you need me to wake Xiao Yin up and ask her to come? No need. Yang Qindong waved his hand. He had arranged for Xiao Yin to go to bed first. In his own words, women were made of water. If they wanted good skin, they needed good sleep. It was precisely this sentence that caused this habit to become a natural one. Unless there was something special, Xiao Yin would go to bed early. Right now, Xiao Yin was probably already asleep. Without knowing what the other party wanted, it wouldn't be appropriate to rashly wake Xiao Yin up. Forget it. Bring her to the study. Yang Qindong thought for a while, put on his coat and then strolled toward the study. When Tiger's Mane took Lady Snow to the study, Yang Qindong was writing something with his head down. If someone was there, they would know that he was writing a classic play, The Legend of the White Snake, which was later made into a TV series and remade several times. It was also called The New Legend of the White Snake. Madame Snow was brought in. She was wrapped in a long robe, but she was wearing a pair of embroidered shoes that were convenient for walking on the platform. It could be seen that she had come out in a hurry. Is something the matter? She slowly raised her head and looked at Madame Xue from head to toe. She sighed that no matter what she dressed up, she could always attract men's attention. Madame Xue, who had been afraid and anxious, calmed down a lot after Yang Qindong looked at her. She didn't know why. But when she thought of the problems that 100 Flowers Hall might face, she knelt on the ground with a plop. Dong Shuai, save me. Please save Lady Xue. If there's anything, get up and talk. Yang Qindong put down the writing brush in his hand and looked at Madame Snow. What's the matter? Tell me in detail. Madame Snow lowered her head and cried. She was really pitiful. While crying softly, she told him what had happened in 100 Flowers Hall in the evening. She also told him what the pimp had overheard and what Mu Lily had said to her. Shi Sheng? When Yang Qindong heard the name, he felt it was familiar. But he had only been in the capital for a few days. How could he know everyone? In particular, Shi Sheng was just a Jianghu of the brocade guard, a nobody in his eyes. Seeing Yang Qindong's confusion, Tiger's Mane, who was standing next to him, quickly took out a book. After searching for a while, he found Shi Sheng's name. He handed the book to Yang Qindong. Young master, please take a look. He took the book and saw Shi Sheng's name. The investigation of the Security Bureau was written on it. Humph? What the hell? When Yang Qindong saw that Shi Sheng had a brother named Shi Ning, he remembered this person. Shi Ning was a famous traitor in history. Because of him, the capital was almost captured. Seriously speaking, if Yu Qin hadn't stood up for him, the whole capital would have fallen because of him. At that time, the history of the great Ming dynasty would have been rewritten. When Yang Qindong got angry, Tiger's Mane naturally emitted a murderous aura. Young master, do you need me to go to the city now to find this person and then? Madame Snow knelt in front of him. Obviously, she couldn't see Tiger's mane's beheading gesture. But Yang Qindong saw it clearly. No, it's not necessary. At this time you still have to go to the city. However, I'm afraid that you'll still have to make a trip into the city. Do you know who the current owner of 100 Flowers Hall is? Young Master, it's Fan Ling. He was the vice director of the Ministry of War, a secondary class level 5 official. His father used to be the minister of Honglu Temple. As expected of the director of the Security Bureau, Tiger Shine, who had slowly gotten into his role, quickly reported the other party's identity. Of course, all this had a close relationship with 100 Flowers Hall that Yang Qindong had paid attention to. Find him and buy Madame Snow's slave contract. Yang Qindong made a decision after a short hesitation. It was not the right time to have a direct conflict with a villain like Xi Sheng. At least he couldn't look for trouble. There was only one way to solve the problem, which was to buy Madame Snow. In this way, even if Xi Sheng got 100 Flowers Hall, he would only get an empty shell. Yes. Tiger's mane immediately understood the meaning of the sixth young master. He answered and turned to leave. Wait. Madame Snow suddenly said. She came to Yang Qindong for help, but it was just an impulsive act. She didn't have any hope. Dong Shuai was powerful, but he was only talented. Compared to power, he was much weaker. She didn't think that the sixth young master could do anything to Xi Sheng, who even Duke Ying, a hero of the great Ming dynasty, couldn't afford to offend. However, she never thought that Yang Qindong would agree to her request so easily. Moreover, he even wanted to buy her slave contract directly. Amidst his excitement, he thought of his elder sister, Mu Lily. If he left and his elder sister did not, he could imagine how Xi Sheng would treat him. It would be a fate worse than death. There was also her maid Xiaowei. She had been using her for so many years, so she couldn't give her up. At this time, Madame Snow didn't realize that she came to ask for help. She didn't have such awareness. She just thought about how to take her family members to her side, so she shouted, "Wait! Is there anything else?" Yang Qindong looked at Madame Snow with a puzzled expression. Did she still want to stay in 100 Flowers Hall? If so, it would be more difficult to help her. Yes, please understand, Dong Shuai. This servant still has my elder sister Mu Lily and the maid Xiao Wei in 100 Flowers Hall. If this servant leaves alone, Yang Qindong understood that this was a loyal and affectionate Madame Snow. You like this kind of person. He immediately said to Tiger's mane, who was still standing there, "Did you hear that? There are 3 people in total. Buy their slave contracts. Don't be afraid to spend money. Go." Yes. Tiger's mane answered and turned to leave. As for how to enter the city in the middle of the night, it was not a problem for Yang Qindong, the number 1 master beside him. The matter was solved. Although she didn't see the answer, Madame Snow couldn't help but trust Yang Qindong. Especially at this time, the confidence he showed made her feel infatuated. Only the 2 of them were left in the room. Suddenly, there was a very awkward and ambiguous atmosphere in the study. Yang Qindong was the first to feel the difference. At this time, he regretted that he didn't let Tiger's mane take Madame Snow to rest first, so he wanted to call for help. He knew that even if Tiger's mane wasn't here for the time being, Beta Persei, Yang Si and the others would be outside. It could be said that whenever he needed, they would appear at any time. But for some reason, Yang Qindong didn't want to let anyone take Madame Snow away. In this very contradictory mood, he looked at Madame Snow and said unconsciously, "Well, I'll arrange for someone to take you to rest." This was obviously not an order, but a tone of negotiation. Madame Snow was delighted, but she quickly shook her head. "No, I'm not sleepy now. What are you writing, Dong Shuai?" After saying this, Madame Snow stood up and walked to Yang Qindong leisurely. Faced with Madame Snow's approach, Yang Qindong, who could remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, could clearly feel his heart beating faster at this moment. In order to ease the awkwardness, he casually said, "I'm writing a story about love." Really? Dong Shuai's literary talent has long been known in the capital. I wonder if I have the luck to read it first? It seemed that she was asking, but when she finished speaking, she had taken the initiative to walk to Yang Qindong's side and bent down. Because the temperature in the study was suitable, Madame Snow had already taken off her coat and robe. At this time she was wearing a wide-collared top. When she lowered her head, Yang Qindong saw a touch of snow white looming in front of him. Some things couldn't be ignored just because you didn't want to. On the contrary, some things you said you didn't want to think about, but you couldn't help thinking about it in your heart. At this time Yang Qindong was obviously the latter. His eyes followed the touch of Snow White and seemed to see two tall mountains. Madame Snow's skin was very white. Among all the women he knew, only Hu Yen could be compared with her. As the saying went, 100 ugliness could cover up 100 ugliness, not to mention that Madame Snow was a first-class beauty. Against the dim light of the oil lamp in the study, she really made people feel that they were looking at a beauty under the lamp. The more they looked at her, the more attracted they were. Madame Snow seemed to be looking down at Yang Qindong's manuscript, but in fact she had been paying attention to his changes. Although she was a performer and not a prostitute, she had heard and seen a lot of things in the red light district, so she naturally knew how to interact with men. Chapter 87. At this moment, Madame Shui felt that the man beside her began to breathe heavily. His unique breath made Madame Shui's heart beat rapidly. He was handsome, talented, capable, domineering, confident, and had a good family background. When these advantages were concentrated on one person, it would naturally make him shine with incomparable brilliance. Not to mention that Yang Qindong was a hero who had just saved a beauty. Madame Shui was already in love with him. It was undoubtedly very important for her to find a man she could entrust her life to. Now the man was right in front of her. What should she do? What would he do? Whether it was to repay the kindness or to repay the professor's kindness, should she devote herself to him? Or should she give herself to him? Both of them had pure bodies. In this kind of atmosphere, neither of them took the initiative to speak. Neither of them had the intention to break the ice. However, both of them were well aware of each other's thoughts. For a moment, this kind of feeling was indescribable, but it was indeed extremely wonderful. Madame Shui remained motionless. She had been bending over for half a cup of tea's time, waiting for Yang Qindong to do something. She heard from the other sisters that at this time, shouldn't the man be more active? But why didn't Dong Shui do anything? Yang Qindong was indeed hesitating. Logically speaking, he should have carried her in a domineering manner. His bedroom was not far away from the study, and then everything would have gone smoothly. There was even a voice in his heart urging him to do so, and even his body was supporting such a thought. However, Yang Qindong did not do so. Perhaps it was because of his conservative thinking. He thought that if he had sex with Madame Shui, it would be more or less taking advantage of her. He did not want to do so. He preferred success to come naturally. However, Yang Qindong also knew that if he persisted in this atmosphere, he was afraid that he would not be able to control his heart. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and said, "Madame Shui, it's a little late. I should go to bed." "Really? It just so happens that Shui is also sleepy. Why don't you let me warm Dong Shui's bed?" Madame Shui was overjoyed. She thought that Yang Qindong said it on purpose for her to hear. How could she not take advantage of the situation and go downhill like a donkey? Originally, he wanted to find an excuse to separate them so that he could calm down. He never thought that it would lead to such a result. If he said no at this time, it would be too hurtful. Yang Qindong helplessly nodded and said, "All right then." The two of them walked out of the study one after the other and went to the bedroom. A figure slowly retreated from the darkness. Even if he wanted to protect the sixth young master, he still had to consider the situation. Sometimes, if he still wanted to exist, then it would not be protection but rather, it would be a nuisance. Yang Qindong sensed that the eyes that were secretly watching him had left. He knew that from now on only Madame Shui and himself were left. He could not help but feel a little restless. Should he really do something? Or is my manhood coming to an end tonight? Dong Shui, I'll go in first. While Yang Qindong was still thinking about what to do next, Madame Shui had taken off her clothes and then plunged into the quilt. At that moment, Yang Qindong caught a glimpse of her snow-white body. His heart suddenly skipped a beat. Yang Qindong involuntarily got up and walked slowly to the bed. Yang Qindong's heart was beating faster and faster. Madame Shui, who had already slipped into the quilt, was also heartbeat faster. She even blushed from her face to her neck. Then she slowly closed her eyes, but her long eyelashes were still trembling, indicating that she was not asleep and had no intention of falling asleep. Yang Qindong finally finished walking a few steps. He involuntarily stretched out his arm. When he was about to touch the snow-white body that was bowing her head and even trembling, he forced himself to say, "Madame Shui, I'm not used to being warmed by someone." "Oh." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw a snow-white arm emerge from the blanket and wrap around his neck. A strong force assaulted him, causing Yang Qindong to uncontrollably burrow into the blanket along with his clothes. At the same time, a pair of gentle jade lips lightly touched Yang Qindong's lips, causing him to be unable to spit out a single word. The sweet liquid stirred in her mouth. Madame Shui, who was a little clumsy, tried her best to release the strength and courage of her first kiss. Yang Qindong cooperated with her. At first he was passive, but soon he took the initiative. It seemed that the kiss could not satisfy him, so he turned around and pressed himself on her. Then he stared into Madame Shui's beautiful eyes and said, "Do you know that I'm in a wolf's den? How dare you take the initiative to provoke me? Have you thought about the consequences?" "No, and there's no need to think about it. It's my fortune to give myself to Dong Shui," Madame Shui said, panting. She seemed to have drained all her strength just now. At this moment she did not know what to do except wait passively. Madame Shui's words made Yang Qindong's hormones rise. Since he was not afraid of a woman, what was there to be afraid of? If he abandoned her at this time, he would not be a beast but worse than a beast, just like the story said. Yang Qindong made up his mind. He felt that his body had reached its limit, so he decided to release it. He slowly lowered his head and moved closer and closer to Madame Snow. When Yang Qindong thought that it was a matter of course, he suddenly noticed a drop of tear from the corner of Madame Shui's eye. It was this tear that cooled down Yang Qindong's burning body in an instant. What was he doing? Madame Shui came to him because she was bullied, but he wanted to sleep with her. In this way, what was the difference between him and Shisheng, who wanted to bully her? Even if they were congenial, it couldn't be now. Otherwise, there would inevitably be a knot in his heart, which might accompany him for the rest of his life. "Well, we're both tired today. You can rest here. I'll go to another room." Finally, Yang Qindong resisted the impulse and said such a manly sentence, at least he thought so. Then he got up and was about to leave. But the same arm stretched out across the air. "Dong Shui, forgive me, okay? I really haven't thought it through. I'm still worried about Sister Mu and Wei. I understand. Go to sleep. When you wake up tomorrow, you can pretend that nothing happened." Yang Qindong sighed. Madame Shui had something on her mind. Fortunately, he didn't sleep with her at this time. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. No. Seeing that Yang Qindong was about to leave, Madame Shui was unwilling to let him go. She was just not ready, and she was worried about Mu Lily and Wei. That was why she couldn't devote herself to him. But in the end, she really didn't hate Yang Qindong. She even liked him. It was just that today was not the right time. But she couldn't give her all, and she couldn't let the sixth young master leave. Otherwise, who knew whether this man would be angry or not? If so, she was afraid that she couldn't find a way to make up for it. "I'm scared. I'm willing to ask Dong Shui to stay with me. Can you hold me and sleep until dawn?" He could only hold her but couldn't do anything. If it were other men, they wouldn't agree. "Weren't you testing me?" But Yang Qindong unexpectedly agreed. Maybe he really had a good impression of Madame Shui, or maybe he also wanted to feel what it was like to sleep with a beauty in his arms. Of course, there was another possibility. The sixth young master was really sleepy. Don't scold the prodigal. No matter what the reason was, Yang Qindong fell asleep with Madame Shui, who was only wearing a doudou. During this time their heads were very close, but in the end they really didn't do anything. They even had sweet and quiet smiles on their faces. Early the next morning, after Qiao Yin got up, she first took a look at the courtyard. She didn't see the sixth young master, who was exercising. She couldn't help but be very curious, so she went to the bedroom. Here, although Beta Persei was guarding, he didn't stop Qiao Yin when he saw her coming. He just turned a blind eye, but his ears were already pricked up, as if he knew what was going to happen next. Sure enough, just 3 seconds after Qiao Yin entered the sixth young master's bedroom, there was a scream. Following that, Qiao Yin staggered out of the bedroom, her face pale and powerless. After that, she leaned against the door and covered her face and cried. This scene fell into the eyes of Beta Persei, who was hiding in the dark, and he quickly closed his eyes. As a close guard who didn't know Qiao Yin's feelings for the young master. But now, another woman had taken the lead, so it was reasonable for her to be sad. Not long after Beta Persei closed his eyes, Yang Qindong, who had changed his clothes, appeared in front of the door. He reached out and helped the tearful Qiao Yin up, then whispered something in her ear. In an instant, the rain turned into sunshine, and Qiao Yin's face turned into a smile. "Ha ha ha." Yang Qindong laughed after seeing this, then shouted to the dark, "What are you looking at? Why aren't you running with the young master?" Beta Persei, who was hiding in the dark, didn't know what kind of trick the young master was playing, but when he heard the order, he appeared in a flash and followed Yang Qindong. This caused Xiao Yin to be very happy, as if she had made a big mistake. The two of them went out of the courtyard, one after the other, and went straight to the backyard's playground. Leaving behind Xiao Yin, who had already changed into a smile, he turned around and entered the house. Then, his laughter echoed throughout the bedroom. Chapter 88. Xiao Yin was very happy because the young master had told her that he had only comforted Mama Shui. Although he liked Mama Shui as much as he liked her, he did not want her. If you don't believe me, you can go into the house and check. You can even ask Mama Shui to dance as a test. If she had really lost her real body last night, how could she have the energy to dance? Her body probably wouldn't allow it. Because of this, Xiao Yin easily believed Yang Qindong. She even thought that if the young master needed anything, he would definitely look for her first. After all, they had been in a relationship for many years. Yes, that must be it. After the backyard was settled, Yang Qindong seemed to be much lighter when he started running. Beta Persei, who was following behind him, was very curious. How could he still be so energetic after a tiring night? Of course, Yang Qindong didn't need to explain this to him. After returning from the 5-kilometer run, Xiao Yin had already prepared the bath water, but this time there was an extra helper by her side, Mama Shui. After the bath, the three of them had a peaceful and pleasant breakfast together. Tiger's Mane appeared again, and not only that, but also the charming Mu Lily and the maid Little Wire followed behind him. Sister Mu, Little Wire. The three women were very excited to see each other. Tiger's Mane stepped forward and said, "Young master, it's all done. These are the 3 slave contracts." As he spoke, he placed 3 pieces of paper with official seals and handprints in front of Yang Qindong. "Well, you've worked hard. Go and rest." Yang Qindong waved his hand. Originally, he could directly burn these 3 slave contracts, but in this way the 3 of them would not be able to get rid of their lowly status for the rest of their lives. Greetings, Dong Shui. After the 3 women met, they all knelt in front of Yang Qindong with grateful expressions. "Get up, all of you. From now on you have to abide by the rules here. Don't kneel if you don't need to," Yang Qindong said helplessly. He really didn't like this etiquette of kneeling when meeting people. Unfortunately, everyone seemed to be willing to play this game. For example, Tiger's Mane and the others beside him, he didn't know how many times he had said it, but it still didn't work at all. They still knelt when meeting people. Xie Dong Shui. Whether or not the 3 girls would kneel in the future, no one knew, but their thanks were very sincere. "Alright, since you've left 100 Flower Hall, you're now part of my Yang family. I don't keep idle people here. This is a new story I've written. You can think of how to act it out together. These are the manuscripts. You can study them yourselves. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me." She took out the script of The Legend of White Snake that she had prepared a long time ago. There was a very clear plan for the distribution of roles. With this, she could play the roles of Lady Snow and Mu Lily, the former top courtesan. Did they know that this was a job for them? The 3 girls hurriedly agreed, then took the manuscripts and went to the backyard. When only Xiao Yin was left, she walked up softly. "Young master, although they've left 100 Flower Hall, they're still lowly, young master knows. I'll find a way to change their names." Yang Qindong rubbed his head as he spoke. Changing their names was easy to say but difficult to do, especially when they were targeted by Shi Sheng. If he found out that someone had changed Lady Snow and the others' names, he would definitely come looking for trouble. How could he solve this problem? "Young master, there's a eunuch called Mao Mu outside the manor. He said that he's an old friend of yours." Just as Yang Qindong was thinking about how to do this at the lowest cost, Beta Persei appeared and reported Mao Mu's visit. "Oh, it's him. Haha, someone sent me a pillow when I was sleepy. Please." After hearing who it was, Yang Qindong's face was full of smiles. "Is it a eunuch? Does young master want him to do this?" But Shi Sheng's brother is also a eunuch. Xiao Yin was very smart. Looking at the young master's expression, she knew what he was thinking, but she still reminded him with some worry. "It's okay. The relationship between eunuchs is not that united. Young master knows," Yang Qindong said confidently. As the saying goes, evil people need evil people to deal with evil people. Originally, he thought about whether he should use some kind of thunderous method to make Shishing disappear, but he didn't expect Mao Mu to come at this time. That was the best thing that could happen. In the study, Yang Qindong gave Mao Mu a very high level of courtesy and met him here. Being able to meet in the study meant that the two sides had a close relationship. Mao Mu, who was very familiar with this, was very excited. Although the eunuch group was very powerful now, there was Wang Zhen and his henchmen above them. In addition, there was another force, Jining, and a few other small forces. He was just one of them who was not famous. Yang Qindong was now in the limelight. Even Chief Steward Wang Zhen had to look up to him. Logically speaking, this person did not have to treat him like this at all. It would be understandable if he just sent someone to talk to him. However, at this time he was meeting him in a private place like the study. The meaning of this was already obvious. Lord Yang. As soon as the two sides met, Mao Mu cupped his fists and looked very respectful. Eunuch Mao, you don't have to be like this. We are considered old friends. In the future you can call me the sixth young master or Dong Shuai to others. Yang Qindong's face was full of smiles. He looked like an old friend as he spoke. Good, Dong Shuai is a good name. If possible, I will call you Lord Yang, Dong Shuai from now on. Mao Mu's ability to follow the flow was not low. When he saw Yang Qindong being so polite, he immediately agreed. Ah, good. Since you are an old friend, I will definitely not treat you unfairly. Men, bring the things here. Yang Qindong laughed loudly as if he was very satisfied with Mao Mu's attitude. Then two people walked in from outside the study. Tiger's Mane and Beta Persei carried a heavy wooden box and placed it in the center of the study. You can leave. Yang Qindong said casually, then gave Mao Mu a look that said, you know what I mean. This is. Mao Mu was very curious. After getting Yang Qindong's permission, he stood up from the chair, walked to the wooden box and reached out to open it. There was a flash of white light. It turned out to be a box of silver ingots. Looking at the quantity, there were at least 5,000 silver ingots. This is. Mao Mu was indeed a little dizzy from the silver ingots, but he was even more surprised. He did not understand why Dong Shuai would think so highly of him. He originally came here to ask for a favor, but before he could even open his mouth, the other party had already given him benefits. This made him unable to speak his next words. Seeing the surprise in Mao Mu's eyes as well as the trace of greed in them, Yang Qindong laughed loudly and said, Eunuch Mao, I said that since we are good friends, there is no reason for us not to be friends. I'm just giving Eunuch Mao these. I hope that Eunuch Mao can rise to the top. This way, as a good friend, I can also bask in the glory. His words were clear. This was to make use of each other. However, with your current status and identity, Mao Mu, it is far from enough. Therefore, I support you and support you to have more power. In the future, we can all be on equal footing and do great things together, right? In the face of Yang Qindong's initiative to show goodwill, Mao Mu had no reason to reject it. He had always believed that he had the ability. What he lacked was only the opportunity and enough foundation. What was the foundation? That was to have enough background for him to use. In the palace, scheming and scheming were the most important, but money was equally important. If you don't have money, there won't be anyone willing to risk their lives for you. Naturally, it will be difficult for you to do anything. Now Yang Qindong took out more than 5,000 silver ingots. For the current Mao Mu, this was not a small amount of wealth. With this, he could rope in more people in the palace for his use. He did not dare to say that he could do great things, but it was not a problem for him to do some small things in private. As for the other need, which was the so-called opportunity with Yang Qindong, he could use this opportunity to become the link between Dong Shuai and Director Wang Zhen. After all, there were some small matters that the two of them couldn't possibly talk about in person. In that case, his role in this matter would increase, and at the same time, it would also expose the fact that he met Chief Steward Wang Zhen frequently. This was an opportunity. Seeing that Yang Qindong could make up for what he lacked, Mao Mu looked at the sixth young master. At this moment, when Mao Mu looked at the sixth young master, he felt like he was looking at his biological parents. Dong Shuai. With a plop, Mao Mu knelt down in front of Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong's eyes lit up. This person's ability to judge the situation was not bad. He knew when to lower his head. Feeling that he had found the right person, he was satisfied. He pretended to be panicked and asked, Eunuch Mao, what are you doing? However, Yang Qindong was only talking and did not have the intention to help him up. Seeing this, Mao Mu knew that he had to express his attitude. Since he had already knelt down, what was the point of saying some words to show his loyalty? Dong Shuai, this old servant is grateful for your appreciation. In the future, if there's anything you need, feel free to say it. Blade Mountain Flames Sea Guild only needs a word from Dong Shuai, and this old servant will do his best to accomplish it." His face was full of sincerity. Replacing this old servant with this old servant was already a way to express his loyalty. Until now, Yang Qindong was satisfied and bent down to support Mao Mu. "Eunuch Mao, what are you doing? I said that we are friends." "Thank you, Dong Shuai." Taking the opportunity to stand up, Mao Mu knew that he had passed the first test. From now on he was Dong Shuai's man, sharing honor and disgrace. After becoming friends, there were naturally some things that were less roundabout. Mao Mu talked about the matter of diapers. He used himself as a witness to prove the importance of this thing to eunuchs. This time he wanted to get some more so that he could use them for himself, offer them to steward Wang Jin and sell some for money. Chapter 89. That's not a problem. I can naturally provide you and Wang Zhen for free, but I can't do that for the other eunuchs. You have to know that the cost of making this thing is very high, and it's not something from the great Ming dynasty. It comes from the sea. Do you understand? Yang Qindong pretended to be mysterious as he spoke. When Mao Mu heard that the thing came from the sea, he immediately understood. During the great Ming dynasty's maritime ban, once it came into contact with the sea, it would be a huge expense. Dong Shuai, this old servant, understands. I will sell this thing at a high price in the imperial palace. After all, there is no free lunch in the world. If you want to get something, you have to pay a price. Very good. Seeing that Mao Mu was so understanding, Yang Qindong nodded approvingly. Go back and do your job well. If you need anything, just tell me. This young master will do his best to satisfy you. By the way, there is something I need you to do. These are 3 lowly women. I need to raise their status and make them into good people. Is there any problem? Yang Qindong said with a smile as he placed 3 contracts in front of Mao Mu. These 3 people may have offended Shi Ning and his brother. You have to think about it carefully. Mao Mu's hand had already reached out and was about to touch the contracts when he suddenly heard Yang Qindong's words. His hand paused in midair, but he quickly continued to reach out. Don't worry, Dong Shuai. Although it's a little troublesome, Shi Ning's power in the palace is not small. However, there are still many people who don't like him. As long as the money is in place, there won't be any problems. Then let's get it done quickly. How much money do you need? Yang Qindong nodded. Shi Ning was indeed powerful, but if this Mao Mu that he found couldn't solve such a small matter with the help of a large sum of money, then there was really no meaning in supporting him. What he needed was a helper, someone who could do things. For this he was willing to pay the price. However, if the other party was a pile of mud, then there was no point in supporting him. Mao Mu was very clear that this was the first time Dong Shuai had given him something to do. If he did it well, his future would be limitless. If he messed it up, he might not even be able to guarantee his current position. Even if it was for himself, he had to do it well, and he had to do it beautifully. Mao Mu left with 5,000 taels of silver and a pile of diapers. Compared to when he came, he seemed to have straightened his chest when he left, and it was clear that he was full of ambition. Shi Xing had been on duty for most of the night. When he was off duty, he slept all the way until lunch. When he was full and energized, he brought a few of his subordinates and headed straight for the home of Fan Ling, the minister-counselor of the Ministry of War. Last night, Tiger's Mane had suddenly appeared and used an unimaginable amount of money to buy the slave contracts of Lady Shui and the other 2. Fan Ling had already had the idea of exchanging 100 Flowers Hall. Without a pillar, 100 Flowers Hall could no longer regain its former glory. Although he could find new people to train again, how long would that take? Ever since his old father, Fanda, passed away, the influence of the Fan family was far from what it used to be. This also made Fan Ling want to withdraw from the red light district. He was wondering who to find next. At this time Shi Xing came. Although the price he offered was not high or even a little low, Fan Ling still sold 100 Flowers Hall without any hesitation. It was still the same sentence. Without Lady Shui, 100 Flowers Hall had lost its greatest value. Making a move in time might be the best choice. Shi Xing did not expect things to go so smoothly. He offered a relatively low price and waited for Fan Ling to raise the price. Then everyone would bargain for a while. As long as the other party did not ask for too much, he would accept a price that was about the same. Last night, 100 Flowers Hall was very lively. In his eyes, a deal that could get both a beauty and money was suitable. However, Fan Ling was actually so tactful. Even when faced with the low price he offered, he still accepted it. This allowed him to pay a lot less in terms of cost. At this moment, it was as if he could already see a mountain of gold placed in front of him. Of course, there was also that white and beautiful body waving at him. After leaving Fan Manor, Shisheng took the contract of 100 Flowers Hall and found a place to have a good drink with a few of his men. He decided not to rush to make the matter public. He would go to 100 Flowers Hall in the evening and give Madame Shui a surprise. After knowing the truth, her face would become extremely beautiful. The group of people drank a lot of wine. In the end, their bodies were swaying a little. Only then did they support each other to reach the 100 Flowers Hall. However, once they entered, the atmosphere was very different from yesterday. Although there were still many people, they were all noisy and angry. Some of the people who came today were former regulars of 100 Flowers Hall, but most of them came for the 2 new songs. When they arrived here with a large sum of money full of expectations, they heard that Madame Shui had disappeared. Even Mu Lily, the procuress, was nowhere to be found. How could they let it go? They began to shout one by one. "What are you shouting for?" Seeing the chaotic atmosphere in the hall, Shisheng placed his saber on the table in front of him and roared loudly after a loud noise. This move was indeed effective. As soon as this voice came out, the originally noisy scene suddenly became much quieter. Everyone stared at Shisheng, their eyes were filled with confusion. What was this person doing here again? Why was he acting all high and mighty? This shout shocked everyone. Shisheng was very proud. He liked the feeling of being the center of attention. "Okay, stop shouting. If you have any problems, tell me. I will solve it for you. By the way, I forgot to tell you that 100 Flowers Hall will be mine from now on. This is the contract of the transaction." In order to achieve the effect of justice, Shisheng took the initiative to show the contract in front of everyone. Immediately, several people of status came forward. After reading the contract, they all nodded at the same time. Among them was Wang Si, the editor of the Hanlin Academy. "Shi Jianghu, since this place is already your property, may I ask if you still want to sing tonight? If you sing, of course we'll pay the same amount of money. We'll spend it however we want. But if you don't sing, we will leave now. No matter how powerful you are, you can't force us to pay 1 tael of silver here." Wang Si's grandfather was the current minister of the Ministry of Personnel, Wang Ji. With such a relationship, he was not afraid of a small Jianghu of the Brocade Guard. Even if this person's brother was very favored by the emperor, his pride as a scholar made him not shrink back. That's right, that's right. With someone taking the lead, the people below naturally chimed in. No one was afraid of spending money, but spending money wrongly and becoming a sucker wasn't something anyone wanted to do. Shisheng did not care about Wang Si's criticism. Smelling of alcohol, he said complacently, "Who said I won't sing? Since I bought this place, of course I want to make money. How can I destroy my own livelihood? Well, I will go to the procuress Mu Lily now and ask her to arrange Madame Shui to sing for everyone. Not only that, but she will sing 3 or 5 times today to let everyone enjoy it." In order to prove his courage as a new boss and win people's hearts, Shisheng announced loudly. His answer also attracted loud applause from the guests. They all said that Shisheng was a righteous and heroic person. Everyone's compliments made Shisheng feel even more confused. He laughed heartily and arranged for his subordinates to find Mu Lily. This time he was going to order the beauties around as the boss. After all, he was not the first person to ask about Mu Lily and Madame Shui's whereabouts. When the subordinate ran back and whispered something in Shisheng's ear, Shisheng's face suddenly turned gloomy as he roared, "What's going on? They ran away?" "Yes, they were taken away in the morning." The subordinate answered carefully for fear that Shisheng would stab him in anger. "They were taken away in the morning? Who did it?" Shisheng had sobered up a lot. His intuition told him that things were not so simple. Why was it that as soon as he made his move, someone else beat him to it? Furthermore, he had just announced the fact that as soon as he became the new owner of 100 Flowers Hall, the flower pillar under him had disappeared without a trace. This was already not only cutting off his source of income, but also slapping him in the face, and it was an extremely resounding slap. If this matter could not be solved, he was afraid that he would become a laughingstock in the capital. No one could accept that kind of result. In the face of Shisheng's questioning, the few subordinates naturally kept silent, revealing a look of bewilderment. "Investigate. Investigate for this lord. Whether it's to the heavens or to the earth, find out for me." Shisheng's roar resounded in the hall of 100 Flowers Hall. At this moment he was really furious. Shisheng was enraged. As a result, a few of his subordinates scattered in all directions. Along with them the other players also left. Since they couldn't listen to the music anymore, who would stay here and be Shisheng's next punching bag? Of course, Shisheng's subordinates did not run away. They went to investigate the whereabouts of Madame Shui and Madame Shui. The strength of the embroidered uniform guards was very strong. In less than 2 hours they got the news and came back. Seeing his subordinates come back excitedly, Shisheng knew that the result was out. He immediately asked with a fierce look, "Tell me, where did they go?" At this moment Shisheng felt that he had lost face. What he wanted to do most now was to catch Madame Shui and Mu Lily, and then use all kinds of means to let them know how regretful it was to offend him. "Sir, there's news." It said that they went to the Yangzhe village 15 miles south of the city. A subordinate ran up and reported as if he had received a reward. "You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.